Chapter 767. Although Empress Dowager Zhou had slapped her daughter in anger, she had to admit that the eldest princess' words were a bit reasonable. But compared to the important matters of the country, sacrificing a trivial Qinning was nothing at all. Not to mention she was only the Dingyuan princess. Even if she was the emperor's empress, as long as the East Qin crown prince liked her, she would not hesitate to agree as the empress dowager. Unlu, you're not allowed to say another word. If you dare say another word, this widow will send you to the marriage alliance. Empress Dowager Zhou sternly reprimanded. Mother, you. The eldest princess was so angry that her body was trembling. She had always worshipped her mother, but this was the first time she found that her mother had a strange side that she didn't dare recognize. Princess, don't talk back to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager is doing this for your own good, so if there is anything, naturally the Emperor will take care of it. A warm and mellow voice sounded beside her ear. A warm hand held her hand and slowly closed, holding her trembling hand tightly in his palm. The eldest princess turned around and met Yi Tingxian's gentle eyes. His voice was like a clear spring. Although it was not as strong as fire, it was like a trickle, slowly extinguishing the fire in her heart. She nodded and sat down beside Yi Tingxian. Holding her chin, she stared down at the stands in a daze. Very good, it seems like the Emperor and the Empress Dowager approve of my marriage with Aning. Before meeting her, this prince never thought that I would meet my destined girl on this trip to West Chu. Only when I met her did this prince know that she was the woman this prince wanted to marry. This prince wants to take her as my only princess. Namu Kuo raised his voice and said these words in both East Qin and West Chu's languages. The audience was completely silent. No one said a word and everyone just looked at him in a daze. Namu Kuo looked down at the audience. Although he was standing on the ground, his posture was like a king looking down on the world. That kind of arrogance, that kind of arrogance. He took off a black thing from his neck. It looked like an eagle made of pig iron as it spread its wings. This thing looked normal, but when the people in the East Qin stand saw this, their expressions all changed. This eagle is a token passed down in my East Qin country. Aning, I'll give it to you today. From now on you are my Namu Kuo's woman. Namu Kuo's expression turned serious as he hung the eagle token around Qinning's neck. Greetings to the crown princess. The East Qin people immediately gave a tsunami-like shout as they bowed to Qinning. Although they were shouting in the East Qin language and Qinning couldn't understand them, seeing everyone's respectful expressions, she understood that these East Qin people had already recognized her position. Just as Namu Kuo had said, he had given her glory, favor, nobility and halo that no one else in the world could hope to achieve. From now on, she became the high and mighty princess of the East Qin country. Even when facing Mo Chuan, she did not need to kneel down. She could proudly raise her head in front of everyone just like Namu Kuo. She was respected by everyone and enjoyed the attention of everyone. Chapter 768. Ha ha, your highness, isn't it a bit too early for you to be happy? Chu Xiaoyang suddenly began to laugh. Under Namu Kuo's dazzling and unparalleled halo, Chu Xiaoyang was dim and had been forgotten by everyone. But with his laugh he attracted everyone's attention once again. Chu Xiaobai's heart was filled with sadness. Looking at his crazy third brother, he wanted to jump off the stage and drag his third brother far away. Although his third brother had done many wrong things and he hated everything his third brother had done to her, they still had the same blood flowing through their veins. Seeing his third brother in this kind of pain, he couldn't take it. Namu Kuo's eyes finally fell onto Chu Xiaoyang's face. His strong lips curled up, revealing his snow-white teeth as he revealed a smile. Chu Xiaoyang, do you think this prince shouldn't be happy? Chu Xiaoyang's eyes narrowed and a cold glow shot out from his eyes. It was filled with blood and hatred. Your Highness the Crown Prince, you seem to have forgotten something important. She is not your crown princess yet because her current status is this king's legal princess. Before this king divorces her, she will forever be this king's woman. But this king is telling you, I will never divorce her in this life. So you can dream on. Ha 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 ha. He looked into the sky and began to laugh. His laughter was filled with pride and madness. This was the last card in his hand. As long as he held this card, he would not lose her. Hearing this, the West Chu ministers couldn't help looking at him. It was hard to tell if their eyes were filled with pity or disdain. Namu Kuo also began to laugh into the sky. His laughter was even louder than Chu Xiaoyang's, instantly suppressing Chu Xiaoyang's voice. What are you laughing at? Chu Xiaoyang stared at Namu Kuo. I'm laughing at you for not giving up until you reached the Yellow River. Namu Kuo said with a smile, whether she is your princess or not, it is not up to you to decide. Who she belongs to now will depend on this. He raised his right fist and waved it at Chu Xiaoyang. Chu Xiaoyang coldly said, "Your Highness, do you want to compete with this king in martial arts?" Namu Kuo shook his head and revealed a smile. He was like a wild cheetah staring at its prey. "This is not a competition, but rather this prince will openly steal her from your hands." "What do you mean?" Chu Xiaoyang's eyes turned cold. "Chu Xiaoyang, you wouldn't have forgotten so quickly, right? Not long ago you agreed to fight with me. Now is the time. As long as I defeat you, she will be mine." Chu Xiaoyang knit his brows. "This king does not understand what nonsense you're saying. Even if this king loses to you, she will never be your person." Namu Kuo placed his hands on his hips and looked at Chu Xiaoyang. He gave a cold laugh. "This matter is not up to you to decide. According to our East Qin rules, if I like a girl, even if she is married, as long as I challenge her husband and her husband accepts, the girl will belong to whoever wins. Chu Xiaoyang, you can choose not to accept the challenge, but if you accept it, it means you agree to this rule. If you are ignorant and don't know, this prince believes that your West Chu people wouldn't be as ridiculous as you, right?" Chapter 769. You're speaking nonsense. Not to mention there is no such rule. Even if there is, this is our West Chu and not your East Qin. What kind of dogshit rule is this? In our West Chu territory you have to follow our West Chu rules. Chu Xiaoyang angrily shouted out. He had already faintly realized that this was bad. It was like he had fallen into Namu Kuo's trap. He was like a prey that had fallen into a net, making a last-ditch struggle. Namu Kuo gave a laugh and no longer said anything. He just calmly looked at him, looking like he had a card up his sleeve. Chu Xiaoyang's heart was filled with more and more panic. He suddenly turned around and stared at Yi Tingxian in the stands. "Prince Consort Yi, tell this king, is there really such a **T rule?" He shouted out, completely forgetting his manners. He only had one thought in his mind right now, which was, that bastard crown prince was trying to find a loophole. He wanted to take her away from him. Yi Tingxian revealed an awkward expression. He gave a soft cough and nodded, not nodding and not nodding. If he nodded, wouldn't he be admitting that the East Qin country's ancient custom was a dog-shit rule? But if he didn't nod, it was the same as not acknowledging the truth. King Ding Yuan, the East Qin country does indeed have this custom. They can indeed challenge a girl's husband, but if the girl's husband doesn't accept it, then this custom doesn't exist. His words were implicitly reminding Chu Xiaoyang. His meaning was that His Highness had the right to refuse. As long as he refused, no matter how strong the other side was, they wouldn't be able to steal his princess. Chu Xiaoyang was not an idiot. He naturally understood Yi Tingxian's meaning. But he understood, and his face turned even paler. "You tricked me?" He viciously glared at Namu Kuo. His eyes turned red and the veins on his forehead popped out, each word coming out from between his teeth. Namu Kuo gave a clear laugh and his bright eyes narrowed. He said in an uncaring voice, "That's right, this prince tricked you. Who told you to do all these things that a man shouldn't do? Father doesn't need a foreign race like you to help me with my matters. This prince doesn't care about other people's matters, but this prince cares about Ning's matters. Chu Xiaoyang, do you dare fight this prince? If you don't dare, then it means you admit defeat. Then this prince will openly take Ning away." Namu Kuo crossed his arms and gave a faint cold smile. Chu Xiaoyang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He felt like his chest was about to explode from anger as he panted like an angry lion. "Good, if you want to take her away you have to kill me." After saying this he suddenly flew up, a long sword that was as soft as a snake in his hand, stabbing towards Namu Kuo's distraction. Namu Kuo pulled Chen Ning behind him and pulled out the iron bow from his back. He knocked away Chu Xiaoyang's sword and revealed a faint smile. "Let's make this clear first, you're not allowed to renege on your debt. Do you really think you can beat this king?" Chapter 770. This was because he had only exchanged one move and he understood that this East Qin crown prince was a strong opponent. Namu Kuo's bow slammed into his sword, causing Chu Xiaoyang's hand to tremble and the sword in his hand almost flew out. This meant one thing. Namu Kuo's cultivation was deep, it was above his own and not below his. Facing an opponent with such strong martial arts, if he couldn't keep his composure and became impatient, he would lose for sure. If it was a normal competition he didn't care about winning or losing, but this competition concerned who she belonged to. If he lost he would lose her forever, so he had to win no matter what. "Chu Xiaoyang, I couldn't see it, but you still have some skills. However, you are still not this prince's match. Since you insist on losing to this prince will play with you and make you sincerely accept your defeat. Namu Kuo gave a wild laugh just like a hunter playing with his prey. He recognized that Chu Xiaoyang had a treasure sword that could cut through gold and jade, but he was holding a normal iron bow. As long as the other side's sword slashed the back of the bow, his bow would break in half. The most important thing was that a bow and arrow was usually used for long-distance attacks. No one had ever used it as a close combat weapon. Just from the weapon alone, Namu Kuo was at a large disadvantage. But he was bold and skilled, so he didn't care. When Chu Xiaoyang heard the other side's arrogant words, he secretly told himself to remain calm and not fall for the other side's provocation. He was not impatient as he pressed forward step by step. Relying on the strength of his weapon, he slowly gained the upper hand. The two of them moved swiftly and their clothes fluttered in the wind, fighting inextricably. The people in the stands from both sides had already gathered at the edge of the stands, watching the two people who were locked in a fierce battle below the field. They could only watch with their hearts trembling. The East Qin envoys were much more relaxed than the West Chu ministers because they knew that their crown prince was invincible. He had fought countless small and large battles and had never lost, so he definitely would not lose this time. The West Chu ministers were so nervous that they couldn't breathe. Each one of them had a very complicated feeling, hoping that Namu Kuo would win and hoping that Chu Xiaoyang would win. If Namu Kuo won, they would be giving away a girl in exchange for a year of peace and security. If Chu Xiaoyang won, it would be the same as slapping the East Qin people in the face, giving them a lot of face. Emperor, who do you think will win? Chu Xiaobai stood beside Mo Chuan with tightly clenched fists and cold sweat. He naturally hoped that his third brother could win because if his third brother won, he could make her stay. Otherwise, she would have to travel tens of thousands of miles to marry to East Qin and he would never see her again in this life. Mo Chuan was also looking at the two people fighting below. When he heard Chu Xiaobai's question, he gave a non-committal sound. He looked at Namu Kuo and said, Mo Chu Xiaoyang Kuo and Mo. Although Namu Kuo and Chu Xiaoyang were fighting, they were far away from her. The wind from their palms did not touch her at all. Chapter 771. In the entire eastern field, almost everyone's eyes were focused on Namu Kuo and Chu Xiaoyang's match. Only Mo Chuan's eyes were focused on her. He saw her red cloak flutter in the wind, reflecting a faint pink on her snow-white cheeks. He saw the wind blow her feather-like black hair, brushing past her face. He suddenly wanted to help her tuck it behind her ears. He also saw that her eyes were like water, staring blankly at a flagpole that was being blown by the wind. She did not pay attention to the two people fighting in the field, and there was no sorrow or anxiety between her brows. There was only calmness and indifference. She did not seem to care who won or lost, nor did she care who her fate belonged to. She was just immersed in her own thoughts. Mo Chuan really wanted to ask her what she was thinking right now. However, his identity restricted his footsteps. He could only stand motionlessly on the stage and quietly stare at her. Just a bit more and third brother's sword would have pierced Namu Kuo's right arm. It's a pity he dodged it, truly a pity? Chu Xiaobai beside him suddenly gave a regretful cry and stomped his feet, causing Mo Chuan, who was staring at Chen Ning, to come back to his senses. Mo Chuan looked at the field and the situation became very clear. Because of the treasure sword in his hand, Chu Xiaoyang was gaining the upper hand. Namu Kuo could only dodge and did not have the ability to fight back at all. Xiaobai, do you really want your third brother to win? Mo Chuan softly said. I. Chu Xiaobai gritted his teeth, not knowing how to reply. His heart was filled with contradictions. Seeing his third brother gain the upper hand, he couldn't help being secretly happy because if his third brother won, she could stay in West Chu and he could see her from time to time. But if she really stayed, his third brother would lock her up in chains and lock her up like a prisoner, making her lose her freedom and happiness forever. Like this, would she still be happy? If it was like this, it would be better for Namu Kuo to win and take her far away. Although she would be tens of thousands of miles away and they would never meet again, in that vast prairie she would be able to fly freely like an eagle. Freedom and being unrestrained, this was what she wanted. She would be happy with these two things, so why did he have to keep her by his third brother's side and make her suffer for the rest of her life? I want Namu Kuo to win. Chu Xiaobai said word for word. Oh. Mo Chuan was a bit surprised and turned to look at him. He saw the determined expression on the young man's face and guessed what he was thinking, so he couldn't help giving a slight nod. Then what about the emperor? Who do you want to win? Chu Xiaobai suddenly turned his head and looked right at Mo Chuan, asking in a straightforward and bold manner. Mo Chuan avoided his aggressive gaze and turned his head in a non-committal manner. This was a question that he could not answer and could not answer. No matter who won or who lost, she would never be his. Your Majesty, please forgive Xiaobai for saying something disrespectful. Your actions today have greatly disappointed me. Chu Xiaobai spoke again, but this time he used a secret sound transmission. His lips slightly opened and only he and Emo Chuan could hear him. Emo Chuan's back turned stiff. He did not turn around and did not say a word. Chapter 772. He gathered his courage and continued to say, although I despise third brother's actions, his performance today was very courageous because he could protect his beloved girl and fight against the East Qing crown prince. No matter if he wins or loses, I still admire him, but what about the emperor? You didn't say anything from beginning to end. If third brother didn't make a move, would you just watch her leave with the East Qing crown prince? The Empress Dowager even told you to personally decree their marriage. Are you really prepared to personally write the decree? Chu Xiaobai had been holding it in for a long time. He had been holding it in for a long time. He knew that these words were very disrespectful, and if he angered the emperor, he would lose his head. However, he also knew that the emperor would not kill him because the emperor was a wise ruler. It was because he wanted to be a wise ruler that he had many worries. He had to make a choice between the country and his personal affairs. It wasn't that Chu Xiaobai didn't understand this, but he couldn't help it. He was still young and did things based on his passion and impulsiveness, not being as thorough as Emo Chuan. Emo Chuan turned around and took a deep look at him. He was once young and was as hot-blooded as Chu Xiaobai, so he understood Chu Xiaobai's feelings, but he couldn't return to his past self. This was because his current identity was the emperor and he had things he couldn't do. These things were things that Chu Xiaobai would never understand. The only thing he could do right now was remain silent. Xiaobai, what do you think I should do? His lips slightly opened and he also used a secret sound transmission technique. Moreover, he changed the way he called himself from this one to I, meaning that Chu Xiaobai did not need to care about his identity as the emperor and could speak freely. If third brother loses, you should personally make a move and steal her back. Chu Xiaobai blurted out without any hesitation. Your meaning is that your third brother will lose? Emo Chuan looked at the two people fighting in the field. Chu Xiaoyang's sword flashed, one sword after another, firmly trapping Namu Kuo in a net of swords. Namu Kuo became more and more clumsy, not being able to move at all and showing signs of defeat. The longbow in his hand had already been cut by Chu Xiaoyang's sword, and Chu Xiaoyang couldn't help revealing a proud smile. When Chu Xiaobai saw this, he gave a heavy nod. That's right, third brother is not Namu Kuo's opponent. In less than 10 moves, Namu Kuo will begin his counterattack. He is purposely acting weak in order to bait third brother into using his full strength. Then he will see through the flaws in his sword art and kill him in one strike. That's right, Xiaobai, your eyes are very accurate. Namu Kuo's martial arts is better than Xiaoyang. Then Emperor, if third brother loses, will you make a move? Chu Xiaobai stared right into Emo Chuan's eyes and asked without relaxing. Emo Chuan calmly looked at him and replied, no. Why? Chu Xiaobai tightly gritted his teeth. Prince made. She made, Yang didn't V of Mu God she made, she said. Su Qin Prince of Chu Xiaobai did not understand, so he followed Emo Chuan's gaze in confusion. Her expression was as calm as Emo Chuan's, as calm as water without any waves. Could it be that she had already made up her mind to leave West Chu? Chapter 773. When. At most one more move and Xiaoyang will win. The eldest princess finally let out a long sigh of relief and her tightly knit brows relaxed. Even if Chu Xiaoyang was wrong, she still hoped that Chu Xiaoyang could win. Empress Dowager Zhou's face sunk. At this time, even people who didn't understand martial arts could see that Chu Xiaoyang had completely suppressed Namu Kuo. His sword glowed like a rainbow and there was only a flash of white light. Not even Namu Kuo's figure could be seen. This was because his entire body was surrounded by Chu Xiaoyang's sword glow and he couldn't escape. A relieved smile appeared on the face of the eldest princess. Emo Chuan and Chu Xiaobai looked at each other and both gave a sigh in their hearts. The two of them did not say anything and turned to look at Chu Xiaoyang. At this moment, the situation on the field suddenly changed. Chu Xiaoyang was high-spirited. The spirit snake sword in his hand seemed like it was alive as it released 9 plum blossoms, stabbing at Namu Kuo's face. This move was fake and real and fake. It was hard for people to tell which sword was real and which sword was fake. He wanted to leave a mark on Namu Kuo's face and teach him an unforgettable lesson. Good move. Namu Kuo's voice suddenly sounded like thunder as he let out a loud roar. He was already in a difficult situation, but he suddenly pulled out an arrow from his back. He knocked the arrow, and at this critical moment, with a shio sound, he shot out an arrow. Chu Xiaoyang never thought that at this close distance, Namu Kuo would actually shoot an arrow. Moreover, the target of the arrow was not him at all, so he couldn't help being a bit stunned. The sword in his hand did not stop at all as it continued to stab at Namu Kuo like a poisonous snake. Zheng. A loud metal clashing sound rang out and sparks flew in all directions. In that split second, Chu Xiaoyang felt his wrist tremble as a large force charged at him. He could no longer hold the sword in his hand, and it flew out of his hand, flying into the air. Namu Kuo's arrow was aimed at the tip of his sword. The arrow and sword tips collided in the air, creating sparks. At the same time, the large impact from the arrow sent Chu Xiaoyang's sword flying. Chu Xiaoyang felt his throat tighten as Namu Kuo's bowstring had already caught him. Namu Kuo dragged him and he couldn't help falling to the ground. He fell flat on his face with his butt in the sky, looking very unsightly. The East Qin stands erupted with thunderous cheers and strange cries. Everyone saw Chu fall in such a sorry state and they broke out in laughter. Namu Kuo placed his bow on the ground and looked down at Chu Xiaoyang, giving a long laugh. "You've lost," he said bluntly. Chu Xiaoyang's throat was tightened by the bowstring and he couldn't move as he laid on the ground. His face was already purple and it was hard for him to breathe, so he couldn't speak at all. He closed his eyes, his heart filled with despair. Yes, he had lost. He had suffered a crushing defeat. "Your Highness, since you've already won, let go of my third brother." Chu Xiaobai jumped down from the stands and went to support Chu Xiaoyang lying on the ground. "Your Highness, since you've already won, let go of my third brother." Chu Xiaobai jumped down from the stands and went to support Chu Xiaoyang on the ground. Chapter 774. Chu Xiaobai raised his head and angrily said, "Killing someone is nothing. My third brother has already lost, what else does your Highness want?" He was so angry that his chest was heaving up and down. Although he had already expected Chu Xiaoyang to lose, he never thought he would lose in this kind of sorry state. Especially seeing Namu Kuo deliberately humiliating his third brother in front of everyone, he could not take it anymore. Namu Kuo proudly said, "He has lost, so he has to follow the rules of losing." He raised his head and looked right at Mo Chuan. "Your Majesty, I've heard that your country's rules say that if a man is dissatisfied with his wife, he can write a divorce letter. Today this prince wants your Majesty to make the decision and have Ning personally write a divorce letter, divorcing this heartless Chu Xiaoyang. I wonder if your Majesty will agree?" Once he said this, it was like throwing a giant stone into a calm lake. It instantly set off a large wave in the West Chu stands. The ministers couldn't help discussing with each other. This crown prince is too overbearing, actually making this kind of rude request. There are only men divorcing their wives in this world. How could there be a woman divorcing her husband? Unreasonable, simply unreasonable. Emperor, you can't agree to his rude request. He is clearly humiliating King Ding Yuan. Mo Chuan's face sank as the ministers surrounded him discussing. No matter how much they didn't get along with Chu Xiaoyang normally, they were all West Chu citizens, so how could they not resist being bullied by an East Qin person? Chu Xiaobai couldn't help looking at Qin Ning. His heart was clear, he knew that this request was made by Qin Ning. He just never thought that she would hate his third brother to this degree. Her actions were simply throwing his third brother's face to the ground. There had never been a precedent of divorcing a husband in West Chu. Was today going to be an exception? As for his third brother, was he going to be publicly divorced by Ning? To his third brother this was a great shame. From now on, how would he have the face to stand in front of others? His lips slightly moved, wanting to persuade her, but when he thought of his third brother's actions, he swallowed all his words back into his stomach. His third brother only had himself to blame. Woo woo woo. Chu Xiaoyang could not say anything, but his ears could clearly hear it. His lungs were about to explode from anger and his face was so red that it seemed like it was about to drip blood as he desperately struggled. Namu Kuo looked down at him and kicked him with his right foot. He flipped him over and faced him. He slightly loosened the bowstring in his hand and said with a cold smile, "What, do you have something to say?" Chu Xiaoyang finally sucked in a breath. Half his face was covered in dust and his eyes were filled with hatred as he stared at Namu Kuo Chu. "You want to divorce this king? Don't even think about it." He spat. "Loser, what right do you have to say no?" Namu Kuo gave a disdainful smile and looked up at Mo Chuan. "Your Majesty, according to the rules of the competition, this prince has won, so this prince will take away the woman that belongs to me. However, her current status is Chu Xiaoyang's wife, so this prince will restore her freedom and let her divorce her husband. If your majesty does not agree, then this prince can only take care of it myself. What do you mean? Chu Xiaobai asked with a cold expression. Chapter 775. Emperor, he is using King Dingyuan's life to threaten you. You can't agree. The ministers in the stands were filled with rage as they angrily glared at Namu Kuo. If the respected West Chu king was divorced by his own princess, not only would it be a humiliation to Chu Xiaoyang, it would also be a humiliation to them as men. In this era where men were superior to women, none of them could accept this. Empress Dowager Zhou's heart skipped a beat. Divorcing her husband was not a humiliation to her. Why was it that only men could divorce women and women couldn't divorce men? If she agreed to Namu Kuo and let Chen Ning divorce Chu Xiaoyang, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. She could send away this burning hot potato and she would have less to worry about. But seeing the angry looks on the ministers' faces, she couldn't openly agree to divorcing her husband. Oh, the minister's meaning is that we can't let the King Dingyuan princess divorce her husband? Mo Chuan looked around and saw everyone nodding. Then your meaning is that we should let King Dingyuan die? He softly said. The ministers looked at each other in blank dismay. Their expressions were filled with surprise. Hearing the emperor's words, it seemed like he agreed to divorcing her husband? But how was that possible? Emperor, in the several hundred years since the West Chu kingdom was founded, there has never been a precedent of divorcing one's husband. If this precedent is set, I'm afraid all the women in the capital city will follow suit. What face would we men have left? That's right, Emperor, please reconsider. We can't set this precedent. The ministers all spoke out, standing on the same front, swearing to defend the dignity of their men. How could Mo Chuan not understand that these ministers all had the same thoughts? As long as this precedent was set, their wives and concubines would rebel. Then is your face more important or King Dingyuan's life more important? Come and give this one an idea. Mo Chuan said without batting an eyelid, throwing this problem to the ministers. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay and lowered their heads, not daring to make a sound. How could they have the courage to make a decision for the emperor, not to mention this matter was related to Chu Xiaoyang's life? If they insisted on not divorcing their husband and angered the East Qing crown prince, the other side would tighten their bowstrings and King Dingyuan would die. Then this black pot would fall onto their shoulders. Empress Dowager Zhou would not forgive them, the emperor would not forgive them, and King Jing'an, who had a deep relationship with King Dingyuan, would not forgive them. Thinking like this, who would dare have any objections? Your Majesty, you are wise and far-sighted. Your decision will definitely be the most correct. This matter should naturally be decided by your Majesty. The smart minister already saw through Mo Chuan's intentions and quickly spoke up to greet him. Yes. Emperor, you can decide. Actually, divorcing your husband is not a big deal. King Dingyuan is so heartless towards his princess, it really makes people angry. He should be divorced. If we don't divorce King Dingyuan, we won't be able to calm the anger of the women of the world. This minister also supports the princess divorcing her husband. Ding Chen, King Dingyuan is not the anger of the women. They were just small arms. How could they resist the emperor's thick thighs? Since it was like this, why didn't they follow the emperor's heart? Although Chu Xiaoyang was under the high platform and couldn't move under Namu Kuo's control, he still heard every single word of the ministers in the stands. Hearing everyone's words, all supporting Chen Ning divorcing her husband, he was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Chapter 776. Bastard, this king has been a minister with you all for so many years, but I never thought that you would all be a group of cowards. Adding insult to injury, despicable and shameless. Chu Xiaoyang angrily cursed out. What elegance, what etiquette, he didn't care about anything at all. Some vulgar and dirty words kept coming out of his mouth. The ministers in the stands were all stunned. They didn't think that when the usually noble and elegant prince cursed people, he would be like a third-rate hoodlum in the marketplace. He wasn't noble at all. Zai, I never thought that a dignified king would use such vulgar words to curse people. It seems like when the princess was by his side, she must have suffered a lot of abuse. Emperor, this old minister supports divorcing her husband. She must divorce him. The ministers all stood on Chen Ning's side and supported divorcing her husband. Mo Chuan gave a slight nod and said, since everyone agrees with the princess divorcing her husband, then this one cannot go against everyone's wishes. Alright, Your Highness, this one agrees. The princess can personally write the divorce letter and divorce King Dingyuan. Hearing this, the ministers all looked at Mo Chuan with wide eyes and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. What do you mean you can't go against everyone's wishes? Isn't this clearly the emperor's idea? You just want to borrow everyone's mouths to say it. Now you are saying that divorcing your husband is our idea. When King Ding Yuan explodes in anger, he will blame this bad debt on us and find trouble with us. But the emperor's words were like gold and jade. No matter how much the ministers criticized in their hearts, they did not dare say it out loud. They could only swallow this bitter fruit in secret. Chu Xiaoyang's face was so dark that it could drip water. Anger, shame, anger, and all kinds of emotions filled his chest. He did not want to think of anything else, he just wanted to bang his head against the wall and die. He was a dignified king with a high status and noble identity, but he was actually being divorced by his princess? This was simply a joke as large as the heavens. A joke that no one would believe if it was said. But this joke was becoming a reality. If he was really divorced by Qin Ning, he would become the laughingstock of the West Chu country. He would be the first man to be divorced by his wife and everyone would laugh at him. Namu Kuo, kill me, kill me. If you want her to divorce me, I would rather die. He gritted his teeth as he stared at Namu Kuo. He gave a low roar like a lion that had fallen into a trap. Namu Kuo looked down at him and slightly narrowed his eyes before breaking out in laughter. Chu Xiaoyang, you never thought this day would come when you tortured her. Now it's time for you to pay the price for your actions. You humiliated me like this just to help her vent her anger, right? You are doing this for her, right? Chu Xiaoyang angrily shouted. Chapter 777. Ning, the emperor has already agreed. Write the divorce letter and divorce him. Namu Kuo waved at Qin Ning. Qin Ning stood far away as if everything that had just happened had nothing to do with her. But everyone knew in their hearts that everything Namu Kuo had done today was all for her. The West Chu people looked at her with very complicated feelings. They didn't know if they should thank her or hate her. After all, because of her, the East Qin crown prince had given up on the next two competitions and waived a year's worth of tributes from West Chu. This was a good thing for the West Chu people. But she had Namu Kuo humiliate Chu Xiaoyang in front of everyone. This was equal to slapping everyone's face, making the ministers unable to raise their heads with burning faces. In front of everyone's complicated gazes, Qin Ning did not seem to notice. She wore a plain red cloak and had a graceful figure. Her face was as white as snow and her hair was like fog as she walked towards Chu Xiaoyang step by step. Ning, The anger in Chu Xiaoyang's heart unknowingly disappeared. He looked at her in a daze, not willing to blink. In these 3 days of searching without rest, he had thought that she had died countless times. He blamed himself to the point that he could no longer live, but now she had appeared in front of him. She was still that beautiful and he couldn't move his eyes away. Ning, tell me have you been that man? Chu Xiaoyang's words suddenly stopped. This was because he saw Qin Ning's eyes suddenly turn into 2 sharp arrows that shot right at him, making him choke on his words. That's right, what face did he have to ask her this? It was clearly him who drugged her, even if she was really. She couldn't be blamed, it was all his fault. I'm sorry Ning, I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. He said in a dejected voice, just like a rooster that had lost a fight. Namu Kuo gave a cold laugh. It's too late to admit your mistakes now. Someone bring a pen and paper. Someone beside him immediately brought over a pen and paper. Ning, write it immediately and divorce this man that is not a man. Namu Kuo handed the pen and paper to Qin Ning. Chu Xiaoyang's face was like ash. He stared right at Qin Ning and forcefully gritted his teeth. Ning, do you really want to leave me? You really don't have any feelings for me? In the past, it was clearly you who wanted to marry me. Why did you give it to me? Why did you give it to me? What do you think I am? A random rag? How could you be so cruel? You is with a woman without a heart. This prince's kindness to you has all been fed to dogs. Qin Ning looked at him. There was no hatred in her eyes, there was only a faint disgust and a trace of pity. Until now he still didn't know what he had done wrong, so he pushed all the blame onto her. Ning. Ning. She picked up the pen and wrote it down without hesitation. In a moment, a divorce letter had been completed. Ning, Chin with Ning Qin. Writer. Qin Ning, the eldest daughter of the country protecting Duke Xinfang, married King Ding Yuan Chu Xiaoyang by imperial decree. However, Chu Xiaoyang's morals are lacking and his actions are improper, so she has written this divorce letter, divorcing her husband Chu Xiaoyang. From now on, the man and woman will be married and will never be related. Chapter 778. After Qin Ning finished reading the divorce letter, she raised her head and looked around. Then she said in a clear voice, "Everyone here today is a witness. Chen Ning will divorce my husband Chu Xiaoyang today. From now on, Chu Xiaoyang and I will go our separate ways, we will have nothing to do with each other." After saying this, she raised the divorce letter in her hand. The paper gently fell from the air and landed beside Chu Xiaoyang. Chu Xiaoyang's eyes widened. He stared at the black and white divorce letter and his body began to tremble. Even at this moment he still could not believe that he had been divorced. He had actually been divorced. And it was in front of thousands of people. He had never experienced this kind of humiliation before. This was simply more unbearable than dying 10,000 times. His teeth began to creak as he suddenly raised his head. His eyes filled with anger as he stared at Chen Ning. His eyes seemed like they were about to burst into flames. If he could move, he would have strangled her without any hesitation. How much he had loved her before, how much he hated her now. All the love he had for her had turned into hatred. He hated her, he really hated her. He tasted the taste of blood in his mouth. He had unknowingly bitten his own tongue. Very good. Very good. Chen Ning, the humiliation you've given me today, I will make you pay it back in the future. Chen Ning, just you wait, that day will come. Chu Xiaoyang opened his mouth and silently laughed. Blood flowed from the corner of his lips, making his handsome face look even more terrifying. "Third brother, don't be like this. You. Stop laughing." Chu Xiaobai stared at this scene without blinking, but he did not say a word. What could he say? He could not say anything. Although he supported Chen Ning leaving Chu Xiaoyang, he never thought that she would use this kind of intense method to leave. That divorce letter was equivalent to peeling off his third brother's face and throwing it on the ground for everyone to step on. He understood Chu Xiaoyang and he knew what his third brother cared about the most. That was his face. Chen Ning had publicly divorced her husband, causing his third brother's face to fall. How could his third brother not hate her to the extreme? When his third brother hated a person, that cruel method of revenge made him tremble just thinking about it. He began to worry for Chen Ning. Especially when he saw third brother laughing soundlessly while bleeding from the corner of his mouth, his heart clenched. After Chu Xiaoyang finished laughing, he said while gasping for breath, "Very good. Chen Ning, you've divorced me, so we'll be strangers from now on. Can you tell your man to let me go?" He quickly recovered from his crazy state, but the more it was like this, the more worried Chu Xiaobai was. Third brother, he's not normal. He would definitely take extreme measures to take revenge on her. Chen Ning did not even look at Chu Xiaoyang. She looked up and said to Namu Quo, Quo, let him go. Quo. Hearing this name, Chu Xiaoyang's bloodthirsty eyes became even darker. He cracked a smile and said, Quo, what an intimate name. Chen Ning, you've been with him for a long time, right? Had they slept together before? Even if this prince didn't drug you, you would have already climbed into his bed, right? This king still treats you like a treasure, cherishes you, loves you, and can't bear to force you. If I knew that you were a woman who could sleep with anyone, this king would not have shown mercy to you. This king should have had a taste of you a long time ago. Chapter 779. Third brother, don't say any more. You. Your words are too ugly. You. How can you use these kinds of words to scold Ning? Chu Xiaobai's face turned red hearing this and he was stunned. If he didn't see it with his own eyes and hear it with his own ears, he would not have believed that such vulgar words would come from his third brother's mouth. There were many vulgar words he had never heard before. Ugly? Her actions are even uglier than my words. Why don't you help me scold her? Chu Xiaobai, if you are my brother and if you still think of me as your third brother, then help me scold this shameless slut. Chu Xiaoyang said with a dark face. Chu Xiaobai's face turned from red to white. He was breathing heavily as he stared at Chu Xiaoyang. Third brother, shut up. If you dare scold her one more time, I'll hit you. You'll hit me? Chu Xiaobai, you want to hit me for this woman? Don't you know who I am? You're your third brother. Who is she to you? She just divorced me, so she's just a passerby that has nothing to do with you. Chu Xiaobai, did you also go to bed with her? Otherwise, why would you protect her like this? Not only you, there is also the emperor. He did not even finish because Chu Xiaobai suddenly waved his hand. A heavy and loud slap landed on Chu Xiaoyang's face. Chu Xiaoyang's words came to an abrupt stop. His eyes popped out as he looked at Chu Xiaobai in disbelief. Chu Xiaobai, you're crazy. You dare hit me. He angrily roared out as he desperately struggled, wanting to charge forward. He was truly mad with anger. The little brother that had been close to him since he was young had actually hit him for a woman. Namu Kuo knit his brows. If it wasn't for him controlling the bowstring, Chu Xiaoyang would have already charged out like a mad dog. Chu Xiaoyang, I did hit you. Because you deserved a beating. I wanted to fiercely beat you for a long time, but because you are my blood-related brother, I couldn't do it. But listen to the words you used to scold her. Is that something a man should say? Third brother, I have admired and respected you since I was young, but the things you've done have disappointed me time and time again. You are not fit to be my third brother. Because you're not a man with courage and responsibility at all. Chu Xiaobai's young face turned red from excitement. He straightened his back and the words he had been suppressing in his heart flowed out like a stream. His scolding made Chu Xiaoyang stunned and he did not reply for a moment. Chu Xiaobai took a breath and took a step forward. He righteously looked at Chu Xiaoyang and continued to say. Chapter 780. Third brother, if you are a man, then stand up for me. Don't act like a dog that can't afford to lose. Acting like this will only make Ning and everyone else look down on you even more and look down on you. If you really love her, then prove it to her. If you really are a man, you have to be able to lose and let it go. You can lose her today, but that doesn't mean you can't win back her heart in the future. Third brother, this is all I have to say, you're on your own now. After Chu Xiaobai said this, he took a deep look at Chu Xiaoyang before leaving without looking back. He did not walk onto the stands, rather he kept walking until he walked out of the East Field's gates. The sunlight shined down on his snow-white robe and his body was covered in a golden glow, making him look very dazzling. At this moment, everyone's eyes were following his figure. Because his words were too beautiful, too straightforward, and said what almost everyone present wanted to say. There were clearly several thousand people here, but it was completely silent. Namu Kuo kept staring at Chu Xiaobai's back until he couldn't even see his shadow anymore. Then he turned around and gave Chen Ning an emotional sigh. Ah Ning, it's a good thing you didn't marry him in the past. I never thought that a person like Chu Xiaoyang would have this kind of brother. This brat is amazing. I Namu Kuo rarely admire people, but this brat has truly made me admire him. Chen Ning watched Chu Xiaobai leave without looking back. She suddenly felt that this white-clothed youth had grown up overnight. She had always treated him like a little brother, but the words he said just now made her eyes suddenly wet. This was the first time she felt that she did not understand Chu Xiaobai at all. His inner world was much richer and more beautiful than she had imagined. He walked so naturally, so beautifully, and the words he said were even more powerful and resonant, making people want to applaud and cheer for him. Namu Kuo was right, he was no longer that childish-faced youth. He had transformed into a youth that people admired and admired. In the stands, Empress Dowager Zhou couldn't help saying to Emo Chuan beside her, Emperor Xiaobai has grown up. Emo Chuan nodded. He looked in the direction Chu Xiaobai left with a deep gaze. That's right, it was like this was the first time he met Chu Xiaobai and he was deeply shocked by his words. Chu Xiaoyang's face turned red and white. He tightly pursed his lips and did not say a word, but he had already lost his arrogance and arrogance. He was no longer angry or roaring, he had suddenly calmed down. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the blue sky above him. Seeing the golden sunlight fall on his body, his face slowly calmed down. Namu Kuo looked at him and raised his right hand. He put away his bow and coldly said, Chu Xiaoyang, stand up. If you are a man, then stand up, don't lie down. Chu Xiaoyang slowly stood up from the ground. He did not look at Namu Kuo, rather he looked straight at Chen Ning. He looked at her. Chen Ning hesitated for a bit. She turned to look at him and did not say a word. The madness and anger on Chu Xiaoyang's face had completely disappeared. Although his face was covered in dirt, his eyes were shining, as if he had returned to his normal appearance. It was like he was a completely different person from the mad dog from before. Chapter 781. Chen Ning calmly looked at him and shook her head. No, I don't hate you. From now on, I no longer have anything to do with you. Chu Xiaoyang, I hope that all the grudges between us can be resolved with that divorce letter. I won't hate you because hating a person takes a lot of energy and energy. I don't have that much energy to hate you, so I will forget about you. I will forget all the memories related to you and never think about it again. Chu Xiaoyang's body heavily trembled. He finally understood that losing a person wasn't when they left his side and never looked back, but rather when they pulled him out of her heart, not leaving a single trace. This was true sorrow. His heart was filled with intense pain. Chu Xiaobai's words flowed through his heart and he admitted that everything he said was right, but there was one thing that was wrong. That was that his feelings for her were real. He used all the energy in his body to love her, but he really didn't know how to love her. His possessiveness was stronger than his emotions, pushing her further and further away until she completely left him. The more he wanted to have her, the more he lost her. Chu Xiaoyang felt like there was a large hole in his chest that was dripping with blood, but no one could see it. Only he knew. Losing her, what could he use to fill the hole in his chest? Perhaps he would never be able to fill it. Ning, even if you forget about me in the future and never remember a person like me, I will never forget you. Wait for me to learn how to love someone, then I will come back to find you. Xiaobai is right, I shouldn't give up like this. I lost you today, but I will definitely win back your heart in the future. Chu Xiaoyang bent over to pick up the divorce letter covered in dirt and dust. He gently brushed away the dust on it. He opened it and read it word by word before carefully folding it. It was like he was holding a precious treasure as he solemnly placed it in his chest. I will keep this divorce letter. When it appears in front of you, that will be the time I come back to find you. Ning, I wish you happiness. After Chu Xiaoyang said this, he waved his sleeves and raised his head. His feet gently tapped the ground and his figure floated several feet away. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared from everyone's eyes. East Qin and West Chu were connected by marriage, becoming the Qinjin kingdom and the citizens being exempted from a year's worth of tributes. This matter that was very beneficial to West Chu was settled like this. But the West Chu people's hearts were filled with an uncomfortable feeling. They felt like there was a giant stone pressing down on their hearts, making them unable to raise their heads. Especially when facing Qin Ning, they all felt ashamed in their hearts. The one feeling the most guilty was Empress Dowager Zhou. She admired Qin Ning, and it wasn't that she didn't like her, but she was more anxious than anyone else to send her far away. Only when she left would her son's heart slowly come back. Under her guidance, he would become a good and obedient emperor. He would marry another girl to become his empress, giving birth to a prince with West Chu and make West Chu stronger. All of this was not something that the girl's surname Shen could give him. Empress Dowager Zhou was very satisfied with the result of this matter. What she was most worried about was that the emperor's son would do something that would disgrace the country and the royal family. Chapter 782. You've been in the capital city for several days, but you've been busy, so you haven't had a good look at the scenery of my capital city. Now that your wish has been fulfilled and you have a lover by your side, you can have a good look at my West Chu. Ning is smart, just like a flower. This widow likes her very much. If your highness is not in a rush to return to the country, this widow wants Ning to stay with this widow for a few more days. After all, it's tens of thousands of miles away, and once she marries to East Qin with you, it would be unknown when this widow will see her again. When Empress Dowager Zhou finished speaking, Mo Chuan's body froze. He turned to look at Empress Dowager Zhou and his eyes flashed with a clear light. Empress Dowager Zhou's words were filled with love and affection for Qin Ning, as if she really wanted Namu Qiu to stay for a few more days. However, her true meaning was to wake Namu Qiu up, letting him leave the capital city with Qin Ning and return to East Qin as soon as possible. Mo Chuan gave a bitter smile in his heart. Mother, you really are considerate. You guard your son like he's a thief, but you're in a rush to send her away? You also know that it's tens of thousands of miles away, and once she leaves, you won't be able to see her again, but you can't even wait a few days. Isn't your heart a bit too cruel? But these words only lingered in his heart and he did not say a single word. He couldn't fall out with Empress Dowager Zhou in front of everyone, and he couldn't let the East Qin envoys laugh at West Chu. So he could only remain silent. Empress Dowager Zhou had calculated this point and rushed to say it, making it so Mo Chuan could not refute it. Namu Qiu was a bit stunned. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Empress Dowager Zhou before revealing a smile. Namu Qiu understands the Empress Dowager's good intentions, but Namu Qiu has been away from the country for a long time, and adding in the fact that the mission has been completed, although your country's capital city is beautiful, this prince is eager to return home. I want to bring Ning back to East Qin to see my royal father. The Empress Dowager loves Ning, so when there is time in the future, this prince will bring Ning back to see the Empress Dowager. Namu Qiu's words were very polite, which suited Empress Dowager Zhou's intentions. She said with a faint smile, "Since your highness wants to return, then this widow won't keep your highness here. This widow will prepare a thick dowry for Ning. Your highness, Ning is the best girl in my West Chu country. If she is taken away by your highness like this widow really can't bear it." Namu Qiu laughed as he said, "Many thanks to the Empress Dowager and the Emperor's deep affection, bestowing such a good girl to this prince as a concubine. This prince will definitely treat her well and not let her suffer any grievances." I hope that your Highness Crown Prince keeps his word, then I can rest assured. His Highness the Crown Prince is heroic and heroic. He is one of the best men in the world. It is your fortune to be able to marry him. I hope that after the two of you get married, you and your wife will be able to live in harmony and grow old together. Chen Ning's long eyelashes trembled, but she did not look up. She bowed down to Empress Dowager Zhou in the stands. Many thanks to the Empress Dowager. After saying this, she fell silent again. Empress Dowager Zhou turned to look at Mo Chuan and said with a smile, Emperor, young Miss Qin is about to follow the Crown Prince to East Qin. You should say a few words of congratulations and pray for young Miss Qin. Chapter 783. She wanted to blurt out, Mother, what do you mean by this? Aren't you clearly stabbing a knife into Royal Brother's heart? You are too cruel. Yi Tingxian's hands were impatient. Before she could even speak, he grabbed a fruit and stuffed it into her mouth. Woo woo woo. The eldest princess immediately glared at Yi Tingxian. Yi Tingxian shook his head at her. He pointed at Mo Chuan and then pointed at his own heart, making a gesture. The eldest princess didn't understand, but she knew that Yi Tingxian was smart. There must be a deeper meaning to him not letting her speak, so she forcefully swallowed the fruit in her mouth and then looked at Mo Chuan with a pained expression. Although Mo Chuan's face was as calm as before, not showing any emotions, the eldest princess knew that his heart was filled with pain. It was impossible for him to watch his beloved girl marry far away and not be moved. She believed that her royal brother was not a man without a heart. At this time, the thousands of eyes on and off the stage were all focused on Mo Chuan's face, silently waiting for him to speak. Namu Kuo gave Mo Chuan a provocative grin. Your Majesty, this prince will be leaving the capital city with Ning tomorrow. If you have nothing to say, then this prince will be leaving with Ning first. Mo Chuan deeply looked at him. His deep black eyes seemed like they could see through him and into his heart. Namu Kuo raised his head and proudly looked at him. He knew that this young emperor was still in her heart, but he was confident that when she returned to East Qin with him, he would win her heart bit by bit. Your Highness, you've obtained a treasure. I'm jealous of you. Mo Chuan finally slowly spoke. His voice was calm and his expression was calm. It was so calm that no one could understand what he was saying. Empress Dowager Zhou's body couldn't help trembling. She immediately looked up and threatened Mo Chuan. Ku. She forcefully coughed a few times, clearly warning him. This bastard brat, what kind of bastard words was he saying? Did he want to confess to the Qin family's girl in front of thousands of people? If he dared, she wouldn't forgive him. The West Chu ministers did not understand the deeper meaning behind the emperor's words. They only thought that the emperor's words were the same as Empress Dowager Zhou's, tactfully praising Chen Ning. So they all nodded in agreement. If it wasn't because they had no other choice, they wouldn't want this kind of smart and beautiful girl to marry to East Qin. This was because she was like a dazzling pearl in the competition with Namu Kuo, releasing a brilliance that convinced all of them. Ha 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 ha. Namu Kuo broke out in laughter. He gave a slight nod to Mo Chuan. Your Majesty, you're right, it was this prince's luck that was good enough to find this treasure. You don't need to be jealous of this prince, the one this prince should be jealous of is you. After he said this, he bowed to Empress Dowager Zhou and Mo Chuan in the stands before saying, This prince will be returning to the country tomorrow and there are many things I need to take care of, so I'll be leaving first. Tomorrow this widow and the emperor will personally send your highness off. Please do as you wish, your highness. Empress Dowager Zhou nodded. Namu Kuo revealed a toothy smile. He held Chen Ning's hand and sent her onto the carriage. Then he put down the bead curtain, blocking everyone's view of her. From when Chen Ning appeared to when she left, she never looked up at Mo Chuan on the stage. Chapter 784. When she entered the carriage, Mo Chuan slowly looked at the glowing curtain. It was a pity he couldn't even see a corner of her clothes. The envoys in the East Qin stands all followed behind Namu Kuo and the carriage. In a grandiose manner, a group of people left the eastern field without looking back. The eldest princess watched as the group of people left, leaving behind a trail of dust. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. She still did not dare believe that Chen Ning would leave with the East Qin crown prince like this. She would leave her homeland and be married to a foreign country. Royal brother, why don't you keep her? What? You? As long as you say a single word, she wouldn't have to leave. Could it be you're really willing to let her go? She broke free of Yi Tingxian's hand and grabbed Mo Chuan's sleeve. Mo Chuan watched the carriage leave. Even when he couldn't see it anymore, he still did not look away. Hearing the eldest princess' words, he slowly turned to look at her and softly said, Keep? This one does not have that qualification. Unwilling? This one has nothing to be unwilling about. After he said this with an indifferent expression, he pulled his sleeve out of the eldest princess' hand and walked off the stands with large steps. He mounted a horse and galloped forward. His bright yellow royal robe fluttered in the wind and he quickly left the field. The eldest princess was choked by him until she couldn't say anything. She watched him leave on the horse in a daze, and only when he disappeared did she react. Bad person. All bad people. There isn't a single good man. She angrily stomped her foot and cursed through gritted teeth. Her nose was crooked from anger from Emo Chuan. All her passion had been fed to the dogs. She was worried for her royal brother, feeling sorry for him, thinking of ways to keep Ning, but in the end he didn't care at all. Coo, princess, this one has never offended you before. How did you become a bad thing? Yi Tingxian gave a cough beside her. The eldest princess immediately turned around to grab his hand. Tingxian, other than you, there isn't a single man that can be relied on. Then the princess can just rely on Tingxian. Tingxian will not disappoint the princess. Yi Tingxian looked at the eldest princess with a deep feeling in his eyes. He had a cold personality and restrained his emotions. These two sentences were already the biggest confession he could say. The eldest princess' heart was filled with warmth. She didn't care about everyone's eyes as she threw herself into Yi Tingxian's embrace. Yi Tingxian didn't practice martial arts and was just a weak scholar. His body wasn't strong enough, but he reached out to hold the eldest princess' shoulder. He stood there like a pine tree, protecting the eldest princess in his embrace. He knew that under the eldest princess' strong exterior, there was a heart that was softer than a normal person. She was passionate, pure, kind, and easily hurt. From the day he accepted her, he swore in his heart that he would protect her and not let her suffer any harm. The eldest princess heard the powerful and fiery heartbeat in Yi Tingxian's chest, and it was like she could hear his thoughts. Her eyes became wet and tears unknowingly flowed down. He. She. He. Yi he. Chapter 785. The East Qing Guest House. The sky was already dark and a day had passed in the blink of an eye. There were already lights in the room and the gentle candlelight filled every corner of the room. It shone on the expensive furnishings, making it seem hazy and blurry. Sitting in the beautiful room, Chen Ning was lost in thought as she looked at herself in the bronze mirror. She had just finished bathing and her jet-black hair hung down to the ground, still dripping wet. Behind her, there were several East Qing maids helping her with her makeup. Their every move was very careful, with respectful and fearful expressions on their faces. They knew that this beautiful West Chu girl was the future East Qing crown princess, so they were afraid they wouldn't be careful when serving her. Chen Ning was just thinking about her own thoughts as she allowed the maids to help her change her clothes, dress her up and tidy her up. Crown Princess, are you satisfied with this dress? An East Qing maid asked in an unfamiliar West Chu language. Chen Ning finally came back to her senses. Her eyes fell onto the mirror and for a moment she could not recognize herself. That girl dressed in gorgeous alien clothing, was that her? She looked at herself in the mirror in a daze. It couldn't be denied that the maids had dressed her up very beautifully. That fitted dress perfectly accentuated her soft and beautiful figure, making that slender waist look even more graceful. She lightly stood up and heard the crisp sound of small beads colliding with each other. Only then did she realize that the maids had actually tied sparkling beads to her braids, making her look like the stars in the sky, sparkling and dazzling. Too shiny, I don't like dressing up like this. This is not me at all. She said in a soft voice, saying it to herself. Her voice was too low and the maids did not understand. Seeing her brows knit together, they all knelt down with fearful expressions. Crown Princess, if you are not satisfied, these servants will help you dress up again. No need, just leave it like this. Chen Ning shook her head, she was not willing to make it hard for these maids. Not to mention that she did not care if she was beautiful or ugly, she did not care at all. She was just going to a banquet that she had promised Namu Kuo. Your Highness. The maids all greeted Namu Kuo who had just entered. Namu Kuo stood at the door and when he saw Chen Ning, his eyes instantly lit up. Ning, you really are pretty. When you wear these clothes, you look just like our East Qing girls. You were born to be someone from our East Qing country. He gave her a laugh. Chen Ning did not smile and just softly said, Your Highness, we will be leaving tomorrow. What about the matter you promised me? Namu Kuo raised his brows and said, Once you finish eating with this prince, you will naturally be able to see the person you want to see. Alright, I'm ready. Let's go eat. Chen Ning did not want to drag things out. I will definitely do what I promised you. I just hope that your highness will not go back on his words. Haha, you are a man of your word. Could it be that I, Namu Kuo, am a man of my word? Aning, you've called me the wrong way again. If you do this again, don't blame me for punishing you. Namu Kuo seemed to be in a good mood as he spoke with a smile. He reached out his large palm and held her wrist. His appreciative gaze quickly swept over her body and he clicked his tongue. Chapter 786. Chen Ning knew what he was referring to. She was filled with shame and anger as she glared at him. Namu Kuo broke out in laughter. He was very satisfied to see her face turn red. This was her true personality. Actually, under her gentle and beautiful appearance, she had a rebellious heart just like him. She was truly a woman that belonged to him from birth. Come Aning, let's go eat, drink, sing and dance. Tonight you have to play with this prince to the fullest. He pulled her out of the room without saying anything and came into the yard. Chen Ning finally noticed that the entire courtyard was filled with lanterns, brightly illuminating half the sky. In the center of the courtyard, there was a giant fire and there was a large roasted wild boar on top of the fire, releasing an enticing fragrance. Pung! A huge explosion rang out, giving her a fright. Then a meteor firework rose into the night sky, turning into a gorgeous and complicated rain of flowers, sprinkling down from the sky. Following that, fireworks bloomed in the sky one after another, creating a beautiful scene. This is your future citizens showing their respect to the crown princess. Aning, do you like it? If you like it, I'll have them set off fireworks for you every day. Namu Kuo's voice sounded in her ears. She revealed a faint smile, not saying anything. Namu Kuo pulled her to sit beside him. The banquet was in the yard and other than their table, there were also the East Qin envoys. Several dozen people surrounded their table like stars surrounding the moon. Namu Kuo waved his hand and the servants came in, bringing out the wine and dishes. Under the sound of fireworks, there was a group of strong East Qin men with stone drums tied around their waists. They walked barefooted into the center of the field, beating the drums while performing an East Qin dance. The atmosphere was very lively. Namu Kuo took out a small knife from his chest and carefully cut the roasted wild boar into small pieces. He placed it on the plate in front of her and looked at her with a faint smile. Aning, have a taste of our East Qin's roasted pork. You will definitely like the taste, he said in a confident voice. He had never served another girl before, but he was willing to help her do things. The wild boar was roasted just right. It was golden on the outside and the fragrance filled the air. Just smelling it was enough to make a person's fingers move. Chen Ning hesitated for a bit before picking up a piece of wild boar and placing it in her mouth. She gently chewed and a crisp fragrance filled her nose. It was indeed something she had never tasted before. Do you like it? Namu Kuo's eyes sparkled as he looked at her, his words having a double meaning. She seemed to not understand his meaning as she said with a faint smile, "It's very delicious." Namu Kuo broke out in laughter. He raised the wine jug in front of him and poured a bowl of wine for her. This is our East Qin specialty. The wine is spicy and it feels like a knife cutting your throat. It is the best thing to eat with this roasted pork. Do you dare try it? His words was to provoking her, so Chen Ning naturally understood. She picked up the bowl and drank a mouthful. Once the wine entered her throat, it was as Namu Kuo said, it was like swallowing a knife. A wave of heat rushed into her throat and almost made her cry. She picked up the bowl and drank a mouthful. As soon as the wine entered her throat, it was like what Namu Kuo said. It was like swallowing a knife and a burning sensation filled her throat, almost making her cry. Good wine, she sincerely praised. Chapter 787. At this time the East Qin envoys all came forward to toast Namu Kuo. Namu Kuo was very straightforward, drinking all the wine in his bowl. In the blink of an eye, he drank several dozen bowls of wine, becoming more and more spirited. The atmosphere became more and more lively. The drunk East Qin people began to walk down the stage and began to sing and dance. They were born on horseback and grew up on horseback. Moreover, regardless of gender, everyone could sing and dance. They surrounded the burning bonfire and held hands as they danced, singing at the same time. Although Chen Ning did not understand what they were singing, the song was very lively and filled with passion. Her emotions were unknowingly infected by it. Aning, after drinking this bowl of wine, will also go dance. Under the starlight, Namu Kuo's eyes shined even brighter than the stars in the sky. His smile was like the clear sky that broke through the clouds, incomparably brilliant. He looked at her without blinking. Because she had drunk wine, her cheeks were red and her eyes were covered in a layer of drunkenness. Her eyes were even brighter than his. All right. Namu Kuo pulled her up and joined the others in the dance. Although Ning did not know how to dance, she had a photographic memory. This dance was simple, so after seeing everyone dance it a few times, she was able to learn most of it. After dancing it a few times, she was very familiar with it. She danced around the bonfire, her waist swaying like a willow branch. Her arms were like orchids as she danced gracefully. Her beautiful eyes sparkled as she was like an enchanting lily blooming in the night, releasing a faint fragrance. Everyone was stunned, and they unknowingly stopped in their tracks, watching her solo dance. Her long hair flew in the wind and the little beads on her hair bumped into each other, making a clear sound. She spun along with the music, spinning faster and faster as the stars in the sky danced in front of her eyes. Suddenly she stumbled and fell face first into the sky. Namu Kuo reached out to catch her. She closed her eyes and felt dizzy. Countless stars danced in front of her. She did not know if she was drunk or if she was dizzy from spinning. The crown princess can't handle the alcohol, so this prince will bring her in to rest. You guys continue, everyone will have fun. Namu Kuo loudly said. Then he picked her up and strode into the room, placing her on the bed. Ning opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear, not showing a trace of being drunk at all. Your Highness, I've already finished what I promised you. What about the matter you promised me? Namu Kuo looked at her and suddenly grabbed her hand, saying in a low voice, Ah Ning. Her fingertips trembled slightly. She pulled her hand back from his large palm and repeated, You promised me. Wait a minute. Namu Kuo suddenly said. You want to change your mind? Ning knit her brows. No. Namu Kuo shook his head and suddenly stood up. He walked to the window and pushed it open. Someone immediately flew over from outside the window and shouted, Your Highness, someone has broken in. Oh. This subordinate can't see clearly. It's a dozen or so mysterious black-clothed men. All of their faces are covered, but their martial arts are very good. Our dozen or so people are at a disadvantage against their dozen or so people. Right now, several of us are injured. Mysterious people? Chapter 788. Ning's heart skipped a beat and her face turned slightly white. She bit her lower lip and thought, could it be that Mo Chuan sent someone here? No way. With Mo Chuan's personality, he definitely wouldn't. Then, could it be Chu Xiaoyang? She stood up and walked over to the window. She saw that the people dancing in the yard had all disappeared, probably leaving with Namu Kuo. There was only a burning bonfire left in the large field. She could hear the sounds of weapons clashing from outside the walls. It was clear that there was an intense fight going on. She could also hear Namu Kuo's deep voice. Capture them alive, don't let a single one go. Suddenly, a cold wind blew in from the window, bringing with it a deep chill. In that instant, the hairs on Ning's back stood up. There was danger. Her strong sixth sense made her suddenly move to the side. She heard a soft sound and a small thing flew past her face. She could smell a faint fishy smell. The hidden weapon was poisonous. She broke out in a cold sweat, and then she heard a thud sound behind her. That small hidden weapon must have hit the bedpost. It was a good thing she had practiced martial arts. Although she wasn't a martial arts expert, she was more agile than a normal person. She knew that the hidden weapon had flown in from the window, but she couldn't see the person who shot it. She only knew that the person was hiding in the shadows and she was in the light. Ning made a quick decision. She squatted down by the window and rolled under the bed. The thick bed curtains immediately covered her figure. She lay at the bottom of the bed and looked outside. She didn't hear any sound, but she saw a pair of feet suddenly appear in the room. The feet were wearing a pair of black leather boots. They looked ordinary, but the upper of the shoes was embroidered with a pattern of auspicious clouds using purple thread. She couldn't help but take another look. There was killing intent. Ning's intuition told her that the person's target was not anyone else, but herself. But no matter how hard she racked her brains, she couldn't figure out what she had done to offend this person. Why did this person indiscriminately want to take her life? She held her breath as she stared at the pair of black-soled boots. That pair of feet did not move at all. It was clear that he was looking for his target in the room, but he couldn't find it. As long as he didn't find his target, he would not move. Ning's heart jumped into her throat. She knew that if she accidentally made a sound, she would be discovered by this person. But she didn't know how long she could hold her breath. Sooner or later she wouldn't be able to hold it any longer. Namu Kuo. Stupid Namu Kuo. She suddenly realized that this was a diversion, a plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. She suddenly realized that the target was not Namu Kyo. At this moment, the black boots suddenly moved. Almost in an instant, they appeared beside the bed, less than a foot away from her. The purple auspicious cloud pattern on the boots magnified in front of her eyes, and she could see it even more clearly. Qinning's body was as tense as a bow. She did not know if that person had discovered her, so she could only try not to move. However, she had been holding her breath for too long and finally couldn't help letting out a small sigh. That person immediately noticed it. When Qinning took a breath, she already knew it was bad. She suddenly lowered her head and curled up her body. A thin cold light flew over her head and cut off a strand of her hair, narrowly avoiding that killing move. Chapter 789. Qi. Blood splattered everywhere. Qinning saw drop after drop of blood fall to the ground. Following that, with a pung sound, a black-clothed man fell to the ground with a shining throwing knife stuck in his back. Aning. Namu Kyo jumped in from the window. He looked around with a nervous expression, not seeing Qinning's figure. His heart almost jumped out of his chest. He gave another loud shout. Aning, where are you? I'm here. Qinning's heart fell to the ground. She came out from under the bed and patted the dust off her body. She looked down at the black-clothed man. That black-clothed man was wearing tight-fitting night clothes. He was lying on the ground and his face could not be seen. Are you injured? Are you all right? Namu Kyo grabbed her shoulder and looked over her. Finding that she wasn't injured, he let out a sigh of relief. I'm fine. Did you catch the intruders? She asked. Namu Kyo nodded, but his expression was very serious. In a deep voice he said, but they are all dead, not a single one was left alive. After he said this, he crouched down next to the black-clothed man on the ground. He touched his artery and then said with a sigh, he's also dead. They're all dead? Qinning took in a cold breath. They were all killed by you? I didn't kill them. They took poison to commit suicide. Namu Kyo shook his head. He hooked his right foot and flipped over the black-clothed man on the ground. He took off his mask and revealed a normal face. His eyes, ears, mouth and nose were all bleeding with black blood. He knew that his throwing knife was not enough to kill him, so he said, my knife does not have poison on it. Qinning nodded. She could see that this black-clothed man knew that he couldn't run, so he also took poison to commit suicide. Who are they? She asked. Namu Kyo pondered for a bit. According to my guess, they should be a group of trained killers, but my people have searched their bodies and couldn't find any clues. I don't know where these people came from. There are no clues? Qinning suddenly pointed at that person's black leather boots and said, I did find something. Look at the pattern on his boots, it looks like a cloud. You can send people to check the boots of all the black-clothed men. If they all have the same pattern, perhaps you can find out where they came from. Aning, you truly are meticulous, you can even find such a small detail. Namu Kyo was pleasantly surprised. He bent down to take a closer look and indeed found that cloud. However, purple and black were very similar in color, so if one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice the purple pattern embroidered on the black boots. Someone go and check the boots of those men in black. See if they all have the same pattern on them. He ordered loudly. The people outside immediately replied and quickly came back to report. Your Highness, everyone's boots have cloud patterns embroidered on them. Namu Kyo nodded and ordered, everyone guard the guest house well. If anyone dares to break in, kill them without mercy. When he turned his head back, his expression had already become extremely ugly. Namu Kyo did not reply and just stared at her. His deep black eyes did not blink at all. He grabbed her hand and tightly gripped it. Namu Kyo did not reply and only stared at her. That pair of deep black eyes did not blink. He grabbed her hand and gripped it tightly. Qinning could feel that his large palms were covered in cold sweat. Chapter 790. Aning, I'm sorry, it was all because I was careless and fell for the enemy's plan to lure us away, almost taking your life. Namu Kyo's body suddenly trembled as he felt a deep sense of fear. If he hadn't woken up in time and rushed back, she would have already become a ghost under the black-clothed man's blade. Qinning took her hand back from his hand and took 2 steps back, looking at him with a calm expression. Your Highness, you don't need to apologize to me, this is the condition I promised you. You purposely made me play this show with you, didn't you want to lure these people out? But I didn't expect that I would become their target. Is the person they want to kill you or me? She had just gone from life to death and then from death to life, so her heart was filled with anger. "Ah Ning, don't be angry, I really didn't think this through. I never thought they would suddenly change their target. They actually came to kill me, but I don't know why they also wanted to deal with you. It's all because of me that you were implicated." His eyes were filled with regret. If he knew it would be like this, he wouldn't have dragged her into this matter no matter what. "Your Highness, since I almost lost my life for you, you should tell me the reason. Don't let me die without knowing why," Chen Ning gently said. Namu Kuo awkwardly looked at her. After hesitating for a bit, he said, "Ah Ning, I really never thought that assassins would come. I thought that the person who came was Chu Xiaoyang, and I thought that he wouldn't be willing to let you leave with me, so I wanted to lure him out, and then he only wanted to lure out a leopard, but he never thought that he would lure out a group of fierce wolves that almost took her life." "Oh? But Chu Xiaoyang didn't come and it was a group of assassins. Your Highness, this shouldn't be the first time this group of assassins has appeared, right? Your Highness, what kind of background do they have? Can you tell me a bit?" Chen Ning curled her lips and revealed a look of understanding. How did you guess everything?" Namu Kuo looked at her with a look of admiration and surprise. "Alright, I'll tell you. Have you heard of the Purple Heaven Pavilion?" "Purple Heaven Pavilion?" Chen Ning knit her brows. This was the first time she had heard of these three words, but it sounded like the name of a gang from a martial arts novel. Is this the organization behind this group of mysterious assassins? Yes, the Purple Heaven Pavilion is the most mysterious assassination organization in Jianghu. They have only appeared in Jianghu in recent years, but they have developed very quickly. It was said that the Purple Heaven Pavilion raised a large number of highly skilled killers. They took people's money to eliminate disasters. As long as they could afford it, there was nothing they couldn't do. If my guess is correct, this group of killers was sent by the Purple Heaven Pavilion. If you hadn't discovered the cloud pattern on their boots, I really wouldn't have been able to guess their origins. Chapter 791. He looked at Chen Ning and paused for a bit. His eyes revealed a look of worry, "But what I can't understand is why their target tonight wasn't me but you. Could it be because of me? Was it because I dragged you down? But to this day I still don't know who ordered them to do this and why they wanted to kill me. I only hope to leave one or two alive, but it's a pity that my wish wasn't fulfilled." He suddenly pressed down on her shoulder and calmly said, "Ah Ning, you don't need to worry. No matter how strong the Purple Heaven Pavilion's assassins are, you don't need to worry, I will protect you. As long as I, Namu Kuo, is here, I won't let anyone harm you." "So, Your Highness, meaning is that as long as I leave you, my life will be in danger at any moment, right? In order to live in this world, I have to hide under your wings and seek protection, right?" She gave a faint mocking smile. What Purple Heaven Pavilion? What mysterious assassination organization of the Jianghu? She had never heard of it before. She couldn't think of anything. She didn't even know martial arts and she didn't have any enemies, so why would those people treat her as a target for assassination? The only explanation for this matter was that Namu Kuo had arranged a good show or that she had become Namu Kuo's scapegoat. Namu Kuo's eyes turned cold and the hand on her shoulder trembled. His face turned a bit ugly. "Aning, are you suspecting this prince? Do you think that this prince made this up to trick you? Were these black-clothed assassins deliberately arranged by this prince?" he asked while suppressing his anger. "I don't think anything. Your Highness is thinking too much. Life and death are determined by fate. I don't care if they want to kill you or me. I just hope that Your Highness can do what you promised me." She did not want to pursue this matter anymore. Even if the Jianghu really had a Purple Heaven Pavilion, she didn't know anything about it and she did not want to be involved. "Alright, don't you want to see that person? This prince will immediately let you see him. If you are willing, you can bring that person with you. This prince will not stop you." Namu Kuo clapped his hands and loudly ordered, "Bring that person in for this prince." Chen Ning couldn't help straightening her back and looking in the direction of the door. Namu Kuo kept looking at her. Seeing the glow in her eyes, he couldn't help saying in a jealous voice, "Ah Ning, when can you treat me like this? I won't ask for anything else." Her back stiffened slightly but she didn't say anything. The sound of footsteps could be heard from outside as someone reported, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, the person is here. Come in." Namu Kuo said gravely. The door was pushed open and a person was pushed into the room. "Bad people. You are all bad people. Why did you bring me here?" "Eldest miss. Why are you here?" When that person saw Chen Ning, his round little face was filled with surprise and joy. His eyes opened wide as he revealed a look of disbelief. "Xiao Ru. Chin Ning took a step forward and held her hand. Young miss. Feeling the warmth of Chin Ning's palm, Xiao Ru suddenly felt real. She threw herself into Chin Ning's embrace and began to cry as she hugged her. Chapter 792. Xiao Ru looked up from Chin Ning's embrace. Her face was covered in tears and her face was covered in tears. I'm fine, aren't I standing here perfectly fine? I haven't even lost a single hair. Chin Ning revealed a faint smile as she helped Xiao Ru wipe her tears. She did not want Xiao Ru to worry, so she did not mention a single word about what Chu Xiaoyang had done. But young miss, you. Are you really my young miss? Why are you dressed like this? Where did these clothes come from? They're so ugly. They're so ugly. Young miss, quickly take them off. Wearing such ugly clothes, you're not like you at all. Xiao Ru's mouth did not stop. When she saw that Chin Ning was fine, her attention immediately turned to her clothes. She looked over that beautiful dress and her little mouth flattened, revealing a look of disgust. Namu Kuo's face instantly turned dark. Ugly? Ugly? Did this lass's eyes have a hole to pant for air? He was angry and annoyed. He grabbed Xiao Ru's collar and lifted her up like an eagle holding a little chick. He stared at her like he wanted to eat her. Stinky girl, you're quite bold, daring to say that my Ishchin's clothes are ugly. Do you believe that I won't take your head? Xiao Ru struggled in the air, kicking her feet. Her face was red from being strangled and she couldn't breathe. Namu Kuo let her go. You're a respected man, yet you're bullying a little girl, don't you feel ashamed? Chin Ning shouted. Namu Kuo was stunned. He realized that he shouldn't make it hard for a little girl in her teens, so he put Xiao Ru down. He crossed his arms and gave a cold laugh. Who told this little girl to speak nonsense? I gave you the prettiest clothes in my Ishchin country and she actually thinks it's ugly. This girl really has eyes but can't see. Aning, this stupid girl is the person you're thinking about all the time? The person you wanted to see with all your heart is this idiot? Chin Ning did not say anything, but Xiao Ru was already going crazy with anger. Her face was even redder than a red cloth as she screamed, You're the stupid one. You're the stupid one. You're a bad person. She clenched her fists and charged over to punch Namu Kuo. Namu Kuo stood there like a towering mountain, straightening his chest. Her little fists rained down on his body, not even enough to scratch him. He looked down at Xiao Ru with a smile. Stupid girl, use a bit more strength. Are you trying to tickle me? Xiao Ru. Bad person. You're too hateful. Xiao Ru's lungs were about to explode from anger. She raised her head and stared at Namu Kuo. She couldn't understand why this man was so hateful. She found that the other party was actually a head taller than her, like an iron tower. She was petite and exquisite, standing in front of the tall and mighty Namu Kuo. She looked like a bean sprout, thin and small. Xiao Ru, come here. Chin Ning stared at Namu Kuo. Your Highness, is there any meaning in bullying my maid? Xiao Ru Ning. But Xiao Ru was so angry that she began to cry. She threw herself into Chin Ning's embrace and sobbed as she said, Young miss, is this servant really stupid? Chin Ning stared at Namu Kuo. Your Highness, bullying my girl, is there any meaning in this? This servant has also heard that the young miss wants to marry to Ishchin, is that true? This servant has also heard that you want to marry the Ishchin crown prince as his princess, is that true? Chapter 793. Xiao Ru looked up at her with tears in a daze, like she didn't recognize her at all. She opened her mouth and revealed a look of disbelief. Young miss, you can't. How can you marry into Ishchin? This servant has heard that the Ishchin people are like uncivilized beasts. They eat raw meat and drink raw blood. They wear fur that has just been peeled from animals and are covered in blood. Truly disgusting. Also, this servant has also heard that the Ishchin people are very ugly. The men are as ugly as wild boars and there are 2 long fangs in their mouths. Their crown prince must be even uglier. Young miss, you definitely can't marry. Any of our West Chu men are 100 times stronger than their Ishchin men. Young miss, you can't take it too hard. Just because you met a bad person, you can't treat all the West Chu men as bad people. She blabbered on and on. She spoke quickly and anxiously, not giving Chin Ning time to stop her. Xiao Ru, you're not allowed to speak nonsense. Chin Ning berated her. She looked at Namu Kuo from the corner of her eyes and saw that Namu Kuo's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Namu Kuo's heart was filled with anger. Heard. That stupid lass kept saying that she had heard of it. Where did she hear such nonsense from? How could they Ishchin people be uncivilized beasts? How could they be uglier than wild boars? He, the crown prince, was even uglier? Namu Kuo became angrier the more he heard, and his chest went up and down. He suddenly walked forward and grabbed Xiao Ru, fiercely staring at her. "Stupid girl, open your eyes and take a good look. Am I ugly?" Xiao Ru was stunned. She looked at Namu Kuo in a daze and blinked. This was the first time she clearly saw his appearance. His hair was jet black and thick, and his eyebrows were thick and long, like two furry brushes standing on top of his eyes. When he was angry, his eyebrows would jump up and down like two live caterpillars. She tilted her head to look at him, not blinking at all. The more she looked, Namu Kuo was finally satisfied. This little girl was not as stupid as he thought. At least she was stunned looking at his handsome appearance, which meant that she knew what was good for her. "Ha ha, you look. Why is your appearance so strange?" Xiao Ru looked at him and she actually broke out in laughter. "Strange?" Namu Kuo knit his brows. He couldn't think what was strange about his appearance. He couldn't think of anything strange about it. "Eldest miss, look at how interesting he looks. There are actually two caterpillars growing on his eyes, and they move as if they are alive. Aha, this is too interesting. This servant has lived this long and I have never seen caterpillars on a person's face." She giggled like a happy little pigeon, pointing at Namu Kuo's eyebrows, so happy that she could not stand straight. Namu Kuo. Namu Kuo's face turned completely green. In his 20s, this was the first time someone had laughed at his eyebrows. Little girl even thought of could think of this. How could he not know that his eyebrows looked like caterpillars? All right, Xiao Ru, come here. I have something to tell you. Your Highness, if there isn't anything else, you can leave first. I have something to tell my maid. Chapter 794. She was afraid that once Namu Kuo reacted, he would strangle Xiao Ru to death. But caterpillars? She couldn't help looking at Namu Kuo's eyebrows and found that they really were two moving caterpillars. Even she couldn't help admiring Xiao Ru's eyes. She really had a rich imagination. She tried her best not to laugh out loud, afraid that Namu Kuo would add oil to the fire. Namu Kuo panted as he turned to look at Chen Ning and said, "Ah Ning, I really can't think of it. With how smart you are, how could you have a girl as dumb as a pig by your side? She simply has a wooden head. No. It's simply a pig head. She's even dumber than a pig." He was so angry that he was gasping for breath. If it wasn't for Chen Ning's face, he would have dragged that girl over to ask her about it. Why didn't she like his eyebrows at all? Xiao Ru hated people calling her stupid the most. She didn't know Namu Kuo's identity, and hearing him call her stupid, she was so angry that tears came out. "Young miss, don't stop me, I want to tear off this annoying fellow's mouth. Ah, he's too annoying. I've never hated a person this much in my life." She charged at Namu Kuo, but was forcefully pulled back by Chen Ning. "Xiao Ru, you can't be rude to the crown prince." "What, he's the crown prince? This was the Yixing crown prince? Is it the crown prince that young miss wants to marry?" Xiao Ru was stunned. "That's right, it's him." Chen Ning nodded. Namu Kuo saw Xiao Ru's stunned appearance and gave a snort. "Stinky girl, your young miss is my princess and this prince will be your master in the future. You dare be rude to your master, how do you think this prince will punish you?" He looked at Xiao Ru with a threatening gaze and his two thick black brows were lowered. Xiao Ru's eyes blinked and tears began to fall again. "Eldest young miss, why did you lower yourself to marry him? There are two caterpillars on his face making him look fierce and ugly. This servant doesn't like him, this servant hates him. Young miss, did this fellow force you to marry him? Isn't that right? He's really bad, really bad. I want to kill him." Her thoughts were very simple and her brain only had one thought. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists as she charged at Namu Kuo. Her movements were so fast that Chen Ning couldn't stop her. Xiao Ru's head slammed into Namu Kuo's chest. She felt her head go dizzy like she had hit an iron plate. She saw stars in front of her as she swayed and fell to the ground on her butt. "Little girl, this is only a small punishment for you. If you dare to be rude to this prince again, I will marry you to a boar." Namu Kuo grinned at Xiao Ru, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth that sparkled like a wild beast. After he finished speaking, he strode out. Chapter 795. This servant is fine. Xiao Ru's face was filled with tears as her eyes filled with tears. Her headache, neck, and buttocks were all caused by that fierce-looking caterpillar. Ah, she hated caterpillars. Young miss, listen to this servant's advice. You can't marry him. She thought of the words Namu Kuo left before he left and couldn't help shivering as tears began to fall again. Woo woo, he's too bad. He said he would marry this servant to a boor. Woo woo woo. Young miss, if you really become his princess, this servant's future days will be hard to live. She was heartbroken as she cried. Ning was angry and amused at the same time. She rubbed her forehead and began to think about whether she did the wrong thing by bringing Ru over. This girl and Namu Kuo were like fire and water. As soon as she came, she would have a headache in the future. Alright, don't cry. If you don't like Namu Kuo, then you can stay in the capital. I will ask the eldest princess to take care of you. The eldest princess is a very good person. You won't be wronged if you follow her. Before she could finish, Ru excitedly cut her off. Young miss, what are you saying? Do you not want this servant anymore? This servant has already said that I am the young miss person in life and the young miss ghost in death. No matter where you go, Ru will follow you. You will marry the Yixin crown prince and you will go to Yixin to drink raw blood and eat raw meat. This servant will follow you and will never leave you. Young miss, don't think of leaving this servant. Ning was touched and wanted to laugh. She tapped Ru's head, not knowing where this girl heard all these strange thoughts from. Ru, listen to me. Although Yixin isn't as prosperous as West Chu, they don't eat raw meat and drink raw blood. The clothes they wear aren't bloody animal skins. Look at the clothes I'm wearing, how beautiful is the design on it. Also, the roasted meat they make is very delicious. Don't you like eating meat the most? Wait until tomorrow morning, I'll have them prepare a portion of roasted meat for you to eat your fill. Ru's face did not look happy at all. She said with a lack of interest, this servant doesn't care about meat, this servant only cares about young miss. Do you really like that caterpillar? This servant knows that the person young miss likes is not him and the person you want to marry is not him, but rather the emperor. Ning placed a finger on her lips and looked at her with a warning look. You're not allowed to say it, Ru, you're not allowed to say it. Ru blinked and forcefully nodded. This servant won't say it, but if this servant doesn't say it, can young miss really forget him? I'm afraid that he has long been an eldest miss heart. You clearly love him, but you have to go against your heart and marry another person. This servant feels sorry for eldest miss. Ning stroked her hair and softly said, Ru, you're still young and there are many things you don't understand. I have no choice. This servant indeed does not understand. You always say I'm young, but will this servant understand when I grow up? This servant does not understand. If you want to marry, then marry. If you don't want to marry, then don't marry. Could it be that the Yixin crown prince will hold a knife to your neck and force you to marry him? Ru said in a straightforward manner. Chapter 796. Willingly. Ru sucked in a cold breath and her eyes popped out. Young miss, your heart has changed. Could it be that you've fallen for a caterpillar and forgotten about lots of money? Lots of money. Hearing this long-lost name, the smile on Ning's face couldn't help freezing. She shook her head and said, Forget it, you won't understand even if I tell you, so why should I tell you and make you worry? I just want to see you before I leave. Ru, the person I hate to part with the most is you. I just hope that you can live a good life and not have to worry about food or clothing. In the future you can find a person who truly treats you well and marry him. He will love you, cherish you and live a happy life for the rest of your life. I could have arranged all of this for you, but I'm afraid I can't do it. But you can be assured before I leave I will find a good place for you. The eldest princess, she. The more Ru listened, the more afraid she became and the colder her heart became. Although she was pure, she could hear the meaning behind Ning's words. She did not want to take her with her. I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone. I don't want the eldest princess, I only want the young miss. This servant has grown up with you, how can young miss not want me just because you say you don't want me? You. Are you like a caterpillar, thinking I'm stupid, so you don't want me? She pursed her lips and was about to cry again. Nonsense, I never said you were stupid. Ru, you're not stupid. You're just very pure and very cute. Then why don't you want me? Why don't you take me with you? This servant doesn't care about eating raw meat and drinking raw blood. As long as I can stay by the young miss side, it doesn't matter if you marry a pig or a dog, this servant will follow you with all my heart. Ru shouted. A strange G sound suddenly came from outside the window, like someone was fiercely grinding their teeth. Ru's neck shrank back. Young miss, there's a mouse. The servant heard a mouse. It's not a mouse, perhaps it's a weasel. Ning softly looked up and looked out the window. Although she couldn't see, she knew that Namu Kuo was hiding outside the window, eavesdropping on her conversation with Xiao Ru. Hearing Xiao Ru say she would marry a pig or a dog, comparing him to a pig or a dog, wouldn't he be so angry that he would break his teeth? Thinking about it, it was quite interesting. She never would have thought that a proud person like Namu Kuo would be defeated by a stupid girl like Xiao Ru. Perhaps this was the saying, everything has its vanquisher. Namu Kuo was indeed hiding outside the window. His face had already changed color, turning green and red. Hearing Chen Ning calling him a weasel, he could not stay here any longer. If he stayed here any longer, he didn't know what would happen to him because of the two girls' mouths. Xiao Ru, you've always listened to me since you were young. Why are you not listening to me now? Chen Ning said with a sunken face. Eldest miss, as long as you let this servant follow you, I will listen to everything you say. I will do whatever you want me to do. Even if that caterpillar really wants me to marry a pig, this servant will accept it. Xiao Ru raised her little face and resolutely said this. The tears on her face had not dried, but her eyes were filled with determination. Xiao Ru. A warm feeling filled Chen Ning's heart. She forcefully held Xiao Ru's hand, feeling incomparably touched. Perhaps Xiao Ru was very stupid in other people's eyes, but she had given her all of her heart to her. Chapter 797. Young miss, don't leave this servant here alone. This servant has never been separated from you before, so please take this servant with you, alright? Xiao Ru begged. What could Chen Ning say? If she kept talking, she would definitely hurt Xiao Ru's heart. Alright, we have to leave tomorrow morning, so let's rest early tonight. She pulled Xiao Ru onto the bed and laid down next to her. Xiao Ru was excited and emotional, but she was also sad and reluctant. She couldn't describe the feeling in her heart. She had a stomach full of questions to ask Chen Ning, but when she tilted her head, Chen Ning had already closed her eyes as if she had fallen asleep. She did not dare disturb her, so she could only keep everything in her heart. Although she had already made up her mind to stay by Chen Ning's side, when she thought of going to East Qin with the young miss tomorrow, saying goodbye to the place she grew up in and going to a barren land where even rabbits wouldn't poop, her heart was filled with an indescribable sense of fear. She felt afraid. When she thought of that caterpillar's fierce eyes and how he said he would marry her to a pig, she became even more afraid. She had heard that their East Qin men were all fierce and ugly. Now that she had personally seen it, it really was the case. That crown prince was this ugly and the other East Qin men weren't any better. When she thought of this, she felt wronged for the young miss. The young miss was this beautiful and the emperor was also this beautiful. The two of them were simply a match made in heaven. But why did the heavens have to break up this pair of lovebirds and force them apart? That ugly and fierce caterpillar was not worthy of the young miss at all. It would be great if there was a way for the young miss not to leave. She laid on the bed and tossed and turned. Her little head kept thinking, but she couldn't think of anything. She suddenly thought of Xiao Si and couldn't help thinking that Xiao Si was so smart and quick-witted. He seemed like he would never run out of ideas. If he was here, he would definitely be able to think of a good idea for her. Thinking of Xiao Si, the blood in her body immediately heated up and she could no longer sleep. Suddenly sitting up, she could only feel her heart beating rapidly. If I go to East Qin with the young miss, I might never see Xiao Si again in this life. She muttered to herself as she grabbed her clothes. Her heart felt very uncomfortable, like it was being grabbed by an invisible hand. She wanted to cry but she couldn't. But if I stay, I won't be able to see the young miss again, she thought. Xiao Ru was conflicted in pain. She forcefully pulled her hair and finally made the most difficult choice. She could not see Xiao Si, but she definitely could not leave the young miss. She laid back down on the bed and the image of Xiao Si's handsome face flashed in front of her eyes. His smiling eyes were like a fox's. He looked really good when he smiled, his voice was really pleasant to listen to, and the stories he told her were lively and interesting. She just couldn't get enough of it. Xiao Ru thought of that afternoon in dusk. She and Xiao Si sat side by side on the steps. He spoke and she listened. He smiled and she smiled. Her eyes unknowingly became moist. In the future, she would never see Xiao Si's adorable face again. Xiao Si, goodbye. At the age of 15, this was the first time she experienced the feeling of bitterness in her heart. Chapter 798. Xiao Ru thought that she wouldn't be able to sleep at all, but when it was almost dawn, she vaguely felt that there was another person in the room. But before she could open her eyes to see clearly, she felt her vision go black and she fell into a deep sleep. Xiao Ru didn't even have time to open her eyes before she fell into a deep sleep. Before she fell asleep, she seemed to hear a voice by her ear, A long sigh and a warm hand caressed her cheek. Namu Kuo, did you poke her sleep acupuncture point? Chen Ning sat up on the bed and looked at the tall figure that suddenly appeared in front of the bed. Her voice was a bit hoarse and it was not as clear and bright as usual. Xiaoru had not slept the entire night, tossing and turning, so how could she sleep peacefully? She had accompanied Xiaoru for the entire night, but she had kept her eyes closed the entire time, silently lying on the bed without moving at all. Although Namu Kuo had appeared without a sound, she immediately felt something strange. When she opened her eyes, she saw Namu Kuo poking Xiaoru with a finger. That's right. Namu Kuo nodded and his eyes sparkled as he looked at her. He looked like he was glowing and filled with energy. But her eyes were bloodshot and the corners of her eyes looked haggard. But even like this she still made his eyes light up. Why? She asked. Namu Kuo gave a snort and said, You already know the answer, isn't it because of you? You wouldn't really be planning on taking this girl with you, right? If you really wanted to take her with you, you wouldn't have to see her. Chen Ning was silent for a bit before saying with a sigh, You really are very smart. There are some things that I don't need to say and you can guess them all. He instantly revealed a happy smile and raised his chin. He proudly said, Of course, this prince is the smartest person in the world, there has never been anything that can escape my eyes. Other than losing to you once, this prince has never lost to anyone. Aning, quickly get up and dress up. Let this girl sleep a bit longer. After 24 hours, her acupuncture point will open and when she wakes up, you will already be several hundred miles away. She won't be able to catch up even if she wants to. Chen Ning nodded. Namu Kuo was right. Hey Aning, look at me. Look at me carefully. Namu Kuo suddenly bent down and placed his face in front of Chen Ning, scaring her. She couldn't help taking a step back. Look at what? She was a bit confused. Look at me. Do my eyebrows really look like caterpillars? He asked. This question had been bothering him all night, and he had also been looking at himself in the mirror all night. He raised his eyebrows and stared at the mirror. He found that his eyebrows were thick and cute, but they didn't look like caterpillars at all. He had specially woken up early and caught a caterpillar on a tree. He looked at it and he looked at it, but it didn't look like a caterpillar at all. Then he grabbed the caterpillar in one hand and went out to ask his attendants. He raised his eyebrows and asked one by one, Hey look, does this crown prince's eyebrows look like it? Everyone was stunned by his question. The servants looked at the twisting caterpillar in his hand and wanted to laugh in their hearts, but who dared to laugh out loud? They all said in unison, It doesn't look like it, it doesn't look like it at all. Although the answer was the same, Namu Kuo still felt very sullen. Xiaoru's words were like a thorn in his flesh, making it hard for him to calm down. Caterpillar? Chapter 799. When she smiled, Namu Kuo's heart was filled with panic. He grabbed her shoulder and shouted, You're not allowed to smile. Tell this prince the truth, do I really look like a caterpillar? His eyebrows moved. They were thick and dense, looking lively and lively. It really did look like a caterpillar. Chen Ning felt that it looked more and more like it. She really admired Xiaoru's imagination. Aning wouldn't lie to me. If you think it looks like it, then it definitely looks like it. This prince doesn't want to see people with two caterpillars. Namu Kuo was filled with worry. He suddenly took out a small knife and slashed at his face. Hey, what are you doing? I want to shave off these two ugly eyebrows. He shouted. Puchi. Chen Ning laughed. Give me the knife, I'll help you fix it so it won't look like a caterpillar. Fix? How do I fix it? Namu Kuo had a look of astonishment, but he still gave the knife to her. Chen Ning took the knife. Lower your head and close your eyes. Namu Kuo lowered his head and closed his eyes. Chen Ning pressed down on his face and rubbed the knife against his cheek. She deliberately said, You're not allowed to move. If you move, I might take your life. She was just joking, but who would have thought that Namu Kuo would reply without any hesitation? You can take this life whenever you want. Aning, what's mine is yours. Everything I have is yours as long as you say it. I'm only afraid you won't want it. Her heart was heavily shocked and her smile froze on her lips. His words seemed to have been blurted out of his mouth, but she knew that although he was intelligent, he had grown up in the vast grasslands. He was broad-minded and had a straightforward personality. He would say whatever he thought and whatever he said, it was what it was. He was not like Chu Xiaoyang who had a stomach full of twists and turns. Chen Ning did not say anything and used the knife to slowly fix his eyebrows, shaving off all the extra eyebrows. His eyebrows were as thick as iron, each one thick and black. After a bit of trimming they became tall and straight. His eyebrows were like swords that were cut by a knife, looking clean and beautiful. Namu Kyo closed his eyes, feeling the sharpness of the blade, the coldness brushing past his brows. However, her fingers were soft and warm, the breath she exhaled was even more fragrant, making his heart beat faster. Although he tried to control his breathing, his face still slowly became hot and his ears turned slightly red. Chen Ning immediately noticed his strange expression. Her face turned red and she used the back of her knife to forcefully hit his neck. She shouted, "You dare think nonsense." Namu Kyo was shocked, thinking that she was really going to use the knife to cut his throat, but his body only trembled and he did not move. He stretched out his neck to let her do it. He really did what he said. When he realized that she was using the back of the knife to scare him, his heart filled with joy. "Ah Ning." He opened his eyes and his bright black eyes deeply looked at her. His eyes were filled with a strong tenderness. "Ning Kyo na said. Nanamu Kyo. Shao na shao shao shiamo, to de shao tu." Namu Kyo knew that she meant to say, 3 rules. He sighed and put down his arm. "Alright, I won't touch you. I'll wait until we're married. It's getting late, you should quickly freshen up. You have to make yourself beautiful. I want everyone to see that I, Namu Kyo's crown princess, is radiant and peerless." Chapter 800. Namu Kyo looked at the mirror and raised his brows in surprise. He almost did not dare believe that the beautiful man with sharp eyebrows in the mirror was himself. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He laughed for a long time. He happily stroked his eyebrows. Thinking that she had personally trimmed them for him, his heart was even sweeter than eating honey. This day was an incredibly big day for the citizens of the capital city. This was because this was the day the East Qing crown prince was returning home. It said that the emperor and the empress dowager would personally send him off. The citizens had already rushed out of their homes and gathered on the 2 sides of the city gates. There were people rushing out, fighting to see the East Qing crown prince's true appearance. They wanted to see just how beautiful the girl the East Qing crown prince was to marry as his princess was. Chen Ning was wearing the crown prince's dress that Namu Kyo had specially made for her. That beautiful brocade did not steal her elegance at all, rather it made her look like a dazzling pearl. When she came out of the room being supported by the maids, Namu Kyo was waiting in the yard. He had also changed into the crown prince's robe. Although it was still black, the corners of the robe and sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns, looking very low-key and luxurious. The most eye-catching thing was on his chest. There was a golden eagle embroidered on it, showing off his noble status. Hearing the footsteps behind him, Namu Kyo suddenly turned his head. He already knew that she was beautiful, but when he saw her dressed up, he still couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Her crown prince's dress was as red as a flame, making her skin look especially white, almost transparent like jade. When the morning sun shined on it, it was glowing, making it hard for him to open his eyes. When she was wearing a plain white dress, she was as light as a cloud in the sky, making people unable to reach her. But when she appeared in front of him in a bright red dress, it was like a burning flame. It was incomparably beautiful, making his heart heavily tremble. Namu Kyo believed that when she appeared in front of everyone she would definitely shock everyone, especially him. He was already looking forward to the emperor's expression when he saw her. It would definitely be very interesting. Namu Kyo rode on his extraordinary dark cloud snow horse, with his black cloak fluttering behind him, with a bright smile on his young and handsome face. He was in a very good mood as he looked left and right on his horse. He was in high spirits, waving to the cheering citizens on both sides of the road from time to time. Behind him was an exquisite carriage pulled by 8 snow-white horses. The carriage was decorated with pearls and jade, and a thick curtain of pearls hung in front of the carriage, completely concealing the figure inside the carriage. The citizens knew that the person sitting in the carriage was the East Qing country's crown princess, but no matter how long they stretched their necks and how wide their eyes were, they could not see a single hair on the girl's head. The majestic guard of honor was lined up in a long line, stretching from the entrance of the post house all the way to the city gate. Along the way, the commoners cheered for Namu Kyo and the crown princess in the carriage. This was because they all knew that it was because the crown princess was willing to marry to East Qing that the crown prince gave them a year's worth of tributes. This meant that they could live peacefully for at least a year. Chapter 801. No matter how long the road was, there would always be an end. Finally, they arrived in front of the city gates. Namu Kyo stopped his horse and Chen Ning's carriage also stopped. At the end of the road was the Emperor and Empress Dowager Zhou, as well as the civil and military officials, a dense mass of several dozen people. They had been waiting here for a long time, raising their heads in anticipation. Namu Kuo jumped off his horse and bowed to Emo Chuan and Empress Dowager Zhou, saying a few words of thanks according to etiquette. Emo Chuan's face was as calm as always, without any abnormalities. He was not warm or cold, making it hard for people to see through him. Namu Kuo couldn't help admiring the other side's composure, not showing any emotions on his face. If it was him, he would not be able to do this. If he saw his beloved girl marry far away, how could he be this calm as if nothing had happened? He would have already taken out his scimitar to fight that person. Empress Dowager Zhou said with a faint smile, "Your Highness, this widow has already prepared a rich dowry for Ning'er as well as many of my West Chu's specialties. This widow hopes that after Ning'er marries to your country, seeing these things from her homeland will help her feel homesickness. This widow is afraid that Ning'er won't be used to your country's food, so I specially prepared these boxes of food. Sujin, show these things to His Highness." Namu Kuo said with a smile, "The Empress Dowager is truly thoughtful. Aning, come down and say goodbye to the Emperor and the Empress Dowager." The maid opened the bead curtain and in front of everyone's eyes, Qin Ning slowly walked out of the carriage, appearing in front of everyone. Her hair was like fog, her face was like snow, and her long red dress was spread out like a blooming flower. Her peerless appearance dazzled everyone's eyes and made them suffocate. Namu Kuo looked at everyone's stunned gazes with satisfaction. As a man, the more beautiful his woman was, the more face he would feel. Qin Ning looked down and bowed to Empress Dowager Zhou in gratitude. She was now the future East Qin crown princess, so her status was different from before. She no longer needed to bow to Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou held her hand and affectionately spoke to her. Su Jin stood beside Empress Dowager Zhou and her eyes couldn't help turning red. Namu Kuo kept staring at Emo Chuan. Emo Chuan noticed this and turned back to look at Namu Kuo, revealing a faint smile. "Your Highness has something to say to this one?" Namu Kuo shook his head. "This prince doesn't have anything to say, I just want to know if His Majesty the Emperor has anything to say." "Have a safe journey." Emo Chuan thought about it and Emo Chuan. Namu Kuo's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, you only have this sentence?" Emo Chuan looked at him with a complicated gaze before turning his head away. Namu Kuo was stunned. He wanted to see disappointment, jealousy, hesitation, and dispiritedness on this young and handsome emperor's face, but he was disappointed, because he could not see anything from Emo Chuan's face. Qin Emo Mu Qin of Shao of Qin Qin Emo Ning. He was Emo Mu Mu as he as. Ning. As Emo Yu as time as Ning as he as Emo as he Qin as he was. As Ning as Emo as Ning Emo Ning Ling of the time. Emo Ning time. Ling Ning time. The Ning Ning long as Long Chable. Dao. Although he had taken her from the side of the young emperor, he was not happy at all. Chapter 802. So, under the cheers of the citizens and the heartfelt wishes of the West Chu ministers, Qin Ning stepped onto the carriage step by step. Qin Ning stepped onto the carriage step by step. The bead curtains fell down, covering her red dress and her plain face, as well as her line of sight. The carriage rumbled as it drove out of the capital city gates. The line of people sending them off formed a long line, looking incomparably spectacular. Emo Chuan and Empress Dowager Zhou stood on the city walls, silently watching the line of people moving away. The two of them did not say a word, they just watched the beautiful carriage go further and further away, gradually disappearing into a small black dot. Finally they couldn't see it anymore. After a long time, Empress Dowager Zhou gave a slow sigh, breaking the silence first. "It's a good thing this widow told Ting Xian to not send An Lu off, otherwise with this girl's impulsive personality, she would not have been allowed to leave like this." Emo Chuan's palm was pressed against the rough stone wall and his fingers turned white from using too much force. He looked into the distance, not saying a word. "Emperor, they have already disappeared. The wind is strong here, let's return to the palace." How could Empress Dowager Zhou not know how uncomfortable her son was right now? He was a piece of flesh that fell from her body, and the calmer he acted, the more his heart was filled with pain. Ever since he was young he liked to hide his wounds and never let others see them. Even as his mother, he had never complained or shed tears in front of her. She saw Emo Chuan's calm face at this time and her heart began to ache. But she thought that time was the best medicine for wounds. As long as there was time, her son would slowly forget about the Qin family's girl. In this world there was no one who couldn't leave another. Not to mention that her son was the ruler of a country. What girl could he not have? There was not only the Qin family's girl in this world. Suddenly the sound of horse hooves came from afar. The hooves stepped on the blue stone road, creating a sharp and ear-piercing sound. Mo Chuan suddenly turned around and saw a fast horse charging out of the city gates like lightning, chasing in the direction of the East Qin envoys. There was a person on the horse with a fluttering purple robe and a tall figure. Seeing that familiar back, Mo Chuan could guess who he was. Chu Xiaoyang. What was he doing? Mo Chuan immediately turned to go downstairs, but he was pulled back by Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou stared at him with a serious expression. "Emperor, where are you going?" Mo Chuan said in a deep voice, "Mother, you know where your son is going. This widow knows, but this widow forbids you from going. If you dare take a step out of the city gates today, this widow will not allow you to go." Chapter 803. What Empress Dowager Zhou said, how could Mo Chuan not understand? But understanding it was one thing and being able to do it was another. For him to be able to stand on the city walls to send her off, it already took a great deal of willpower to do it. Among the people sending her off, Chu Xiaobai and eldest princess and Lu did not appear. Mo Chuan did not blame them because they could not bear to see her leave her homeland and marry tens of thousands of miles away. Although he appeared to be calm on the surface, was his heart even the slightest bit calm? Even Chu Xiaoyang couldn't help chasing after her, but he could only stand there and watch her disappear from his sight, not doing anything at all. Wait a minute. Qin Ning's carriage did not move fast and she had just arrived at the 10-mile-long pavilion outside the city. Once she left this place she would truly embark on a journey to a foreign country, a journey that she would never return from. At this time, the sound of horse hooves came from the distance and there was a shout that came with the wind. Namu Qiu's brows jumped up. He did not turn around and did not order the carriage to stop, acting like he didn't hear anything. However, he pulled the horse's head and approached the side of the carriage. Wait a minute. The shout rang out again and it was much closer this time. Even Qin Ning who was sitting in the carriage heard it. Her brows knit, not wanting to see the person chasing her at all. She had already written the divorce papers so they had nothing to do with each other from now on. What was the meaning of him chasing her? Did he want to keep pestering her? Ning, don't go. Chu Xiaoyang's horse flew as he quickly chased after her. Namu Qiu turned his horse around and stopped in front of it. He reached out with a large palm and grabbed Chu Xiaoyang's horse reins. The horse gave a neigh and stood up. Chu Xiaoyang jumped off the horse's back and made a turn in the air before gently landing on the ground. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he immediately jumped forward and jumped onto the carriage. Opening the bead curtain, he deeply looked at her in her beautiful red dress. Ning, come with me. I'd rather you marry the emperor than marry this East Qin barbarian to East Qin. I don't want to never see you again in this life. He cried out in a powerful voice. Chu Xiaoyang. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. You've lost to me before, so are you a sore loser? Ning has already divorced you, she has no relationship with you at all, so why are you still bothering her? She is this prince's woman and this prince doesn't like other men calling her by her name. If you keep speaking nonsense, this prince won't be polite to you. Namu Qiu shouted in a sharp voice. He pulled out the curved blade from his waist and waved it at Chu Xiaoyang. The guards under him immediately charged forward and surrounded the carriage. Layer after layer, the weapons in their hands were all pointed at Chu Xiaoyang. As long as he gave the order, Chu Xiaoyang would not be able to escape even if he had wings. But Chu Xiaoyang just stared at Qin Ning, ignoring the people around him and ignoring Namu Qiu's angry roars. Ninger, I said. Ning's Ning Ning said. I of it and I to I yang. I. Chu Xiaoyang, what use is there in saying this now? Chapter 804. Qin Ning remained silent the entire time, not even looking up at Chu Xiaoyang. Hearing this, she finally raised her eyelashes. Her eyes were as clear as water and there was no joy or anger on her face. I've said before, I don't hate you. Why would I want your life? As for your mistakes, I've already forgiven you, so why are you still bothering me? Instead of bothering about what you've lost, it's better to cherish what you have now. Chu Xiaoyang was stunned and couldn't help asking, what do I have? I've lost you and I already have nothing. Now you do. You still have Qin Bai Yun and your unborn child. Qin Ning looked at him and said word for word. What child? That's not my child at all. Chu Xiaoyang's face instantly turned white. His right hand was holding a bead curtain and he unknowingly used force. The beads instantly turned into powder and fell from his palm. So you still don't believe me? Miss Chen clearly said that the child in Qin Baiyun's stomach belongs to a guard and the man she slept with that day was not me at all. I am innocent, Chu Xiaoyang said in a hoarse voice. Chu Xiaoyang, things have already reached this point and you still want to lie to me. What's the point? I'm not lying to you, he loudly shouted. Qin Ning revealed a taunting smile. Perhaps you aren't willing to believe what happened that day. Perhaps you would rather pretend nothing happened, or perhaps you are willing to believe Miss Chen's words and that the child's father is not you. But you forgot something. Miss Chen personally said to you what the only antidote for that drug is. You and Qin Baiyun both took the medicine and if Qin Baiyun can't obtain you she will die. As for you it's the same. If you really didn't do anything with Qin Baiyun, then how did you cure the drug? Even if you really jumped out the window, where is the girl who helped you with the antidote? Chu Xiaoyang was speechless. He forcefully gritted his teeth. He never would have thought that he would miss such a crucial loophole. All right Ning, or I'll tell you. I really did jump out the window that day. Then I went to a brothel and found a brothel girl to help me cure the drug. I was in a daze at the time and I don't remember what that girl looked like at all. I don't remember what happened, I only know that I really didn't do anything with Qin Baiyun. Chu Xiaoyang, stop making stories. Qin Ning interrupted him. Chu Xiaoyang, don't make up stories. Xiao Ning interrupted him. Before he was even born, his biological father had already denied his existence. He is your flesh and blood. Even if you don't love Qin Baiyun, do you not have any feelings for your child? She ruthlessly rebuked him. Chu Xiaoyang's face went from red to white and from white to green. His eyes turned cold. What do you want me to do for you to believe that the child isn't mine? He roared in a low voice. Don't treat me as a fool. Although you and Miss Chen cooperated very well that day and your acting was very good, I can still tell if it's true or false. Her eyes were clear and bright, but there was a trace of impatience in them. It wasn't like her eyes were for breathing. She was Chu Xiaoyang's prisoner that day and she didn't want him to be angry, so she didn't say anything. But he still wanted to lie to her now. Chapter 805. Chu Xiaoyang's chin tightened and he took a deep breath. Under her clear eyes, he suddenly felt like he could not hide anything. Everything about him had been seen through by her. What else could he say? But he was still not willing. Ning, even if something really happened between me and her, you can't blame me. I was drugged and you know how strong the drug is. I really did not lie to you because my mind was not clear at the time. When I woke up, I tried my best to forget about it. You can't leave me because of a mistake I made, that is not fair to me. He tightly clenched his fists as he shouted. Fair? Denying Qin Baiyun and your child like this, how is that fair to her and the child? Qin Baiyun was not a good person and she deserved this retribution, but wasn't the child in her stomach innocent? Chu Xiaoyang, if you are still a man and you still have a sense of responsibility, you should bring her back from the cold palace and let her safely give birth to your child. Then properly raise that child, don't let him be born without a father. Qin Ning was very calm. Although she hated Qin Baiyun, she pitied the child in Qin Baiyun's stomach. But how could Chu Xiaoyang listen to her words at this moment? He was only thinking that she was going to leave him and he could not lose her no matter what. As for Qin Baiyun and the child, he didn't even want to think about it. Compared to her, they did not even have a place in his heart. Ning, now I know why you have to leave me. You think that I slept with Qin Baiyun and had a child with her, so I'm already dirty and not worthy of you, right? But why don't I dislike you? I know that man gave you the antidote and I know that you are no longer innocent, but I still have to beg you. I beg you to change your mind and come back to my side. Why can't you do the things that I can? He suddenly turned around and pointed at Namu Kuo. Could it be that he's clean? Could it be that he has never slept with another woman and had a child before? You can marry him, so why can't you forgive me? Qin Ning looked at him and suddenly felt very speechless. She shook her head, her words were all wasted. Chu Xiaoyang, why are you still so stubborn? She divorced you, not because you slept with another woman and not because you had a child. If you don't understand this, you'll never win her heart. Namu Kuo finally couldn't help speaking as he stared at Chu Xiaoyang. He already looked down on him, but now his eyes were filled with pity and contempt. What a fool. It was no wonder that after being married to her for so long, he had been abandoned by her heart. But at the same time he felt very lucky that this fool didn't know what love was, or else how could he have married her? Then tell me, why is this happening? Chu Xiaoyang roared out. His mind. This prince won't tell you. If I told you, would I let you take her back? I'm not as stupid as you. Namu Kuo smiled proudly. Chu Xiaoyang went crazy with anger. Just like a mad lion, he suddenly charged forward and grabbed Qin Ning's shoulder. Chapter 806. Chu Xiaoyang, you dare touch her. Namu Kuo suddenly raised the scimitar in his hand and chopped down at Chu Xiaoyang's arm. This move was just a feint. He wanted to force Chu Xiaoyang to retreat. Who would have thought that Chu Xiaoyang would not dodge and he would not move his hand at all? With a chi sound, it was the sound of the blade cutting into flesh. The sharp blade deeply cut into Chu Xiaoyang's right arm. Blood sprayed out and quickly dyed half of his arm red. But at the same time, his right palm was already pressed against her shoulder. His blood flowed down his palm onto her red wedding dress, making her dress even more red. He did not let go. Even if his right arm was cut into the bone and it was filled with pain, he still tightly held onto her left shoulder. He used a lot of strength, and the more strength he used, the more blood came out. Very quickly, half of her dress was also dyed red by his blood. That blood was hot. Even though she was usually calm, she couldn't help being moved at this moment. Chu Xiaoyang, are you crazy? Why didn't you move your hand back? Do you know that your arm will be cut off? She said in a hoarse voice as she looked at his blood-red eyes. If Namu Kuo had not taken back half of his strength, Chu Xiaoyang's right arm would have already been cut off. That's right, I'm crazy, I've already gone crazy for you. If my arm is broken, then it's broken, I don't care. Seeing me injured and bleeding, does your heart ache? If your heart can still feel pain for me, that means you still have me in your heart. It's just a broken arm, what does it matter? As long as I can keep your heart, I don't care if he cuts off my limbs. Because he had lost too much blood, Chu Xiaoyang's face became even paler. His hand holding her shoulder began to powerlessly tremble. But he did not care at all. He just looked at her face and revealed a smile. Ning, are you willing to leave with me? When she saw his blood, he clearly saw a flash of heartache in her eyes. It was useless for her to hide it. He knew that he was in her heart. Qin Ning's heart began to feel a strange pain. That familiar and strange pain made it hard for her to breathe. She placed her hand on her chest and felt her heart beating faster and faster. She forcefully bit her lips. That feeling came again. She knew that if she kept looking at Chu Xiaoyang's eyes and hearing his heart-rending words, she would faint again. Namu Kuo. She looked away, not looking at him, not listening to him, and just reaching out her hand. Namu Kuo pulled her hand and she was already out of Chu Xiaoyang's grasp. He placed her behind him and his tall body completely covered her. Chu Xiaoyang's right hand reached out, wanting to grab her sleeve, but it fell down powerlessly in midair. Even though Namu Kuo's strike did not cut off his arm, but the blade had cut through his bones. His injuries were severe and his entire arm was so weak that it did not have any strength. If it was not for his willpower, he would have collapsed long ago. Xiaoyang's chin. Chu Xiaomu Xiaoyang's eyes and fell in his body. He fell down at Yang's. Ning, come with me. He said once again with a pleading look in his eyes. Qin Ning closed her eyes. She took a deep breath and revealed an indifferent expression. It's too late, too late. I will never leave with you. Chapter 807. Third Brother. A white-clothed figure flew over like lightning and caught Chu Xiaoyang falling from the sky. Was Chu Xiaobai. He kept telling himself not to send her off because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to bear seeing her leave. But as time slowly passed, he couldn't help chasing after her. He followed the group and watched her carriage from afar. He just wanted to watch her from afar and silently send her off. He didn't need her to know and he didn't want anyone else to know. He had seen everything that had just happened, but he did not show himself because he did not know what to do. Should he help his third brother persuade her to stay, or should he persuade his third brother to let her leave without any worries? He was hesitating and conflicted. Only when something happened and Chu Xiaoyang was injured did he show himself. Chu Xiaobai quickly tore off his clothes and helped Chu Xiaoyang wrap up the wound on his arm. Seeing the bloody wound that was so deep that he could see the white bone, he couldn't help crying. His third brother's injury was this heavy, how much pain did he have to be in? But his heart should be in more pain than his arm. Others could see the wound on his arm, but what about the wound on his heart? Who could see it? Who could help him wrap it up and stop the bleeding? Chu Xiaobai looked up with tears in his eyes, looking at her standing beside Namu Kuo in a bright red wedding dress. She was so dazzling and bright, just like the most beautiful flower in the world. Anyone who saw her would want to pick her up and make her their own. He suddenly understood his third brother. He understood why he would do all these crazy things for her. He wanted her so badly, he wanted to keep her for himself. But he used the wrong method. His methods pushed her further and further away until she couldn't reach him. He was the one who forced her to leave and forced her to marry in a foreign country. Chu Xiaobai looked down at the fainted Chu Xiaoyang. His heart ached for him, but he couldn't help blaming him. Ning, let's continue on our way. Namu Kuo helped Chen Ning back into the carriage and then waved his hand, giving the order, let's go. The vast group swept up a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, Chen Ning's carriage had already turned into a small black dot, finally disappearing from sight. Chu Xiaobai watched her leave in a daze. She did not turn back or look at him. She left. She left just like this, not coming back at all. His heart was empty, like it had already left with her. After an unknown amount of time, even the shadow of the carriages could no longer be seen. Chu Xiaobai slowly looked away and blinked his incomparably sore eyes. The tears in his eyes had already been blown away by the wind. He looked down and was shocked to find that in the corner of Chu Xiaoyang's eyes, there were two silently flowing tears. Chu Xiaobai's body heavily trembled. Chu Xiaobai was crying. This to him. But he pretended to be unconscious because he didn't want to see her leave with his own eyes, right? Chu Xiaobai's heart tightened. He never thought that his third brother would be this emotional. Even if he used the wrong method, his feelings were sincere and deep, he would not regret it even in death. But he pretended to be unconscious because he didn't want to see her leave, right? Perhaps this was fate making a fool out of people. The changes of the world were all due to the hands of the heavens. They were just mortals, powerless to resist. Chapter 808. The sky gradually darkened and the East Qin envoys were already over 100 miles away from the capital. They found a place with green mountains and soft water to set up camp. They set up several dozen tents on the grass, and the most beautiful one naturally belonged to Namu Kuo and the Crown Princess Chen Ning. Although the two of them were not officially married, they had already decided on their status. So everyone naturally thought that the two of them would live together. When Namu Kuo saw his clothes being moved into the tent by the servants and not thrown out, his heart couldn't help wildly beating. His chest was filled with joy. This was her tacit approval. Namu Kuo excitedly opened his lips, revealing his white teeth. He couldn't stop smiling. He stood outside the tent and opened his throat, happily singing a song. That low and intoxicating song drifted through the night, making everyone who heard it couldn't help revealing a smile. They all knew that the Crown Prince was known as the Nightingale of the Prairie. His song was even more beautiful than the nightingale and the heavenly bellbird combined, but the Crown Prince never sang it. Even if he sang, he would only do it in a place where there was no one around, singing a sad song in a low voice. But today he was singing an emotional love song. He sang very emotionally, as if he was narrating his feelings. Her eyes were so bright and beautiful, even clearer than the water in the sacred lake on the snowy mountain. Her figure was so graceful, like a snow lotus that could walk. Although this was a love song that everyone in East Qin had heard before, when Namu Kuo sang it, it was especially moving. Everyone knew that the Crown Prince was confessing his feelings to the future Crown Princess. But when they heard this moving song, they couldn't help flying away. They thought of the cute smiling face of their lover, as if it was right in front of them. Namu Kuo finished singing the love song, but he still couldn't suppress the excitement and joy in his heart. He jumped into the clear river to take a bath and put on new clothes, cleaning himself up to see her. This was the most important day for him and her. He did not want the sweat on his body to stink her. Your Highness. Namu Kuo opened the curtain and walked in with large steps. The maids in the tent all bowed to him. But he turned a blind eye to them. When he came in, his eyes stared at Chen Ning, who was sitting in front of the dressing table with her back to him. All of you leave? He waved his hand, and the maids immediately retreated without making a sound. There was only him and her left in the large tent. There were no other eyesores and it became very quiet. Namu Kuo could hear his heart beating fast. Ning, he called out. His voice was slightly trembling because he was very excited. Namu Kuo, I've been waiting for you. Namu Kuo, I've been waiting for you. More than a dozen bright candles were lit in the tent, and the candlelight shone on her jade-like face. Her eyebrows and eyes were clear and she was smiling. Namu Kuo was stunned. He almost couldn't believe his ears. Namu Kuo was stunned. He suddenly felt very regretful. If he had known that she was waiting for him, he would have directly come in. Why did he have to take a bath and waste so much time? That's right, I'll wait for you to come in and personally say goodbye to you. Namu Kuo, I'm leaving. Chapter 809. You want to leave? What? The smile on his face disappeared and it was replaced with a taut face and dark eyes. It was like the calm before the storm. Only now did he notice that she had already taken off the bright red crown princess gown and the dazzling jewel-studded head ornament. Her dark hair that was like a waterfall was casually tied up and she was wearing a simple white dress. The style was the most common West Chu style with a single glance. There was not a single bright color on her body, but it was like a lotus that was naturally carved. Compared to her gorgeous dress, it was even more ethereal. This is what we agreed on a long time ago, isn't it? Qinning revealed a smile. Her smile was bright and lively, just like a flower blooming in the night. Her eyes were bright as if all the stars in the sky were in her eyes. Namu Kuo tightly gritted his teeth. That's right, agreement. The agreement he made with her. He promised her that if she lost in the steel reading competition, he would agree to one of her conditions. Therefore this was the condition that she had proposed. All of this was just a play for everyone in the West Chu country to see. He was just an actor playing along with her, but he was too deep in the play. He was so deep that he couldn't pull himself out and he didn't want to pull himself out. Namu Kuo, thank you for sincerely helping me. Namu Kuo, thank you for helping me so sincerely, you've done too well. You allowed me to divorce Chu Xiaoyang in front of everyone, you allowed me to feel proud in front of everyone, and you even exempted our West Chu from paying a year's tribute without any hesitation. I thank you on behalf of the West Chu citizens. If you need my help in the future, as long as you say it, Qinning will definitely go through fire and water for you. However, I have to leave now because he is waiting for me. If I don't leave, he might really think that I left with you. Qinning picked up the bag she had already prepared and placed it on her back. She revealed a faint smile to Namu Kuo and waved her hand. Kuo, goodbye. She floated towards the door like a swallow. A large and powerful hand suddenly grabbed her wrist and forcefully pulled her. In the next moment, she was thrown onto the thick cushioned bed by Namu Kuo. Namu Kuo moved forward and pressed her down. He held her wrists, not allowing her to move at all. He closed in on her and that handsome face was magnified in front of her eyes. His deep black eyes were filled with a burning rage. The smile on his face disappeared. Because her words were like a bucket of ice water, pouring a chill through his heart, causing the blood in his body to freeze. You want to leave? Is it that easy? What do you think I, Namu Kuo, am? Throw me away after using me? He gritted his teeth, and his anger had already enveloped his entire being. Right now he was like a man-eating beast and she was the prey under his claws. She had nowhere to run. He would not let her escape. Qinning's face did not have a trace of panic as she calmly looked at him. This is the condition we agreed upon. Is your highness going to go back on your word? Chapter 810. But so what if he lost his status? He wouldn't let her go no matter what. He was not a second Chu Xiaoyang and he didn't want to be a second Chu Xiaoyang. Your highness meaning is that you want to make it real and you really want to marry me as your princess? Qinning blinked her eyes. Now everyone knows that the woman this prince wants to marry is you, and this news will quickly spread to East Qin and reach my royal father's ears. If this prince goes to West Chu and doesn't receive the tribute and the beauty runs away, I'll return empty-handed. How do you want me to explain this to my royal father? Ning, I'm not forcing you to stay, but think for me. I'm doing my best to help you. Is this how you repay me? Namu Kuo took in a breath and the anger in his chest calmed down a bit. He looked down at her and waited for her reply. Qinning bit her lips and said in a soft voice, Of course I've thought for you. Namu Kuo, I've already thought of everything you've thought of. I won't make it hard for you. You can exempt the West Chu citizens from a year's tribute, so I've already prepared a gift for you. She looked at the bundle beside her with her lips and said, Let me go and I'll show it to you. I think you'll like this gift. I don't want any gifts, I just want you. You are the best gift. Ning, marry me. I'll treat you well, I won't lock you up like that bastard Chu Xiaoyang. His words came to an abrupt halt as he saw the corner of her lips curl up into a sarcastic smile, causing his face to instantly turn red. Her eyes seemed to be saying, Aren't you like Chu Xiaoyang? Then what difference is there between your current actions and his? Namu Kuo was embarrassed and angry. He quickly stood up and pulled her up, letting her sit on the soft cushion as he said, "Is this fine now? Let's have a good talk and I definitely won't make a move against you again." Ning smiled. She knew that Namu Kuo was different from Chu Xiaoyang. He was very direct and impatient, but he had a naivety and straightforwardness that Chu Xiaoyang lacked. That was why she dared to take the risk. "Kuo, do you really not want to see the gift I've prepared for you? You can decide after you see this gift. Do you want the gift or do you want me? If you're determined to make me your princess, alright, then I'll go with you without any hesitation." Namu Kuo's eyes lit up and he immediately said, "I want you, not the gift. I don't need to choose. You should look at the gift first before making your decision, alright?" Ning smiled as she opened her bag. She took out a small booklet and placed it in Namu Kuo's hands. Namu Kuo flipped open the booklet without much interest. It was filled with pictures and the booklet was very thin, only 5 or 6 pages. What you drew? Did you draw?" As soon as he saw the picture at the top, he stopped breathing, his eyes widened, and the words that came out of his mouth came to an abrupt halt. He didn't speak anymore. His eyes scanned the book greedily, not missing a single detail. After finishing one page, he quickly flipped to the next, page after page. He looked very carefully and his breathing became heavy. It was obvious that he was very excited. Chapter 8:11. She knew that this gift would definitely move his heart. "There's nothing else? Why is there nothing else? Ning, where are the other blueprints? I want to see them, quickly give them to me." Namu Kuo flipped to the last one and revealed a look of disappointment. He looked up and anxiously looked at Ning with an excited expression. "Of course there are other blueprints, but I can't show them to you right now. Kuo, this is the gift I want to give you. If you choose me, then I'll take back this gift. Of course, if you like this gift, I'll draw out the rest of the blueprints in detail and give it to you." She looked at him with a smile and slightly narrowed eyes. Namu Kuo angrily stared at her and said through gritted teeth, Ning, you are a sly fox. Doing this, it's not honest." Ning revealed a blushing smile. "Yes, you're right. However, this gift I'm giving you, it should be enough to pay a year of West Chu's tribute, right? If you are willing to accept it, the ones who will benefit will be the hundreds of thousands of East Chin citizens. They will be grateful to you for generations and your name will be recorded in history, passing down through the ages. Kuo, now you should believe that I'm not an ungrateful person, right?" Namu Kuo did not deny it. His eyes fell onto the booklet and then onto her face. There was a fierce battle in his heart, but he could not make up his mind. This was because the gift Ning gave him was completely out of his expectations. The temptation was just too great, it was so great that he could not resist it at all. But he was not willing to give up on her. The more he interacted with her, the more he found that she was an endless treasure. She would give him a pleasant surprise at any time. His mind turned and he suddenly looked up. He looked at her and revealed a confident smile. Ning, you've really given me a very difficult problem, but it is also a very clever problem. You almost confused me. Why must I choose? Of course I want you." His eyes sparkled as he broke out in laughter. Ning revealed a faint smile and said with a nod, "All right, then give it back to me and I'll burn it." She took the booklet from Namu Kuo's hands, but he held it tightly with a look of reluctance in his eyes. "What, your highness can't bear to part with this gift?" She looked at him with a teasing gaze. "Of course. I'm willing. The one this prince can't bear to part with is you." Although Namu Kuo said this, he still couldn't bear to let go. Ning said with a smile, "Let's say this first, if you want me you can't take this gift. Don't think that after I marry you I will give you this blueprint. That is impossible. I will keep my word and keep my word." This was what Namu Kuo was in his heart, but he never thought that Ning would say it. He was instantly stunned. "Ning, why are you forcing me like this?" he said through gritted teeth. Chapter 8:12. It's not. There is only a single Ye Xian in this world, there will never be anyone that can replace her. Ning, I thought your eyes were like hers before, but after being with you for a few days, I understand you more and more. You are different from Ye Xian. I truly want to marry you as my princess, I truly do." Namu Kuo was filled with excitement as he forcefully grabbed her hand. His palm was burning hot and his eyes were even more intense. "But Kuo, the person I like is not you. I am a very stubborn person. I will not easily fall in love with others, but once I do, I will not change. I am very clear on what I want. Kuo, you are also clear on what is most important to you, and that is definitely not me. Otherwise, between me and this present, you would not hesitate at all, you would choose me without any hesitation. For you to be tempted by this present, it means that in your heart the citizens are more important than your personal feelings. Akuo, you will definitely become a wise and godly emperor in the future. The East Qin citizens will be happy to have an emperor like you. Qin Ning's voice was very calm, but her eyes were filled with determination. Namu Kuo looked at her for a while before slowly letting go of her hand. He nodded. You are the person that understands me the most in this world. Ning, you're right. Compared to you, it is much more important in my heart. He grabbed the blueprint and suddenly stood up, turning his back to Qin Ning. Leave. Before this prince changes his mind, you have to leave now. Otherwise this prince will regret it. Qin Ning's eyes instantly lit up. She knew that she had won the bet. She was finally free. Kuo, I will send someone to deliver the remaining blueprints to you in 10 days, I will not go back on my word. After she finished speaking with a smile, she carried her little bag on her back and walked out with light footsteps. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped and turned around. Kuo? Namu Kuo's heart filled with hope. She changed her mind? She wasn't leaving? I'll return this to you. She took the iron eagle from her neck and placed it in his hand. Namu Kuo did not turn around. He could guess what it was when his finger touched it. He turned his hand and placed the eagle back into her hand. The things this prince has given out, there is no reason to take them back. Ning, they belong to you. Qin Ning shook her head. I can't accept this. This is something passed down in your East Qin country. It has a special meaning. The person you should give it to is your future crown princess and the future empress. That person definitely will not be me. Ning, it is still too early for you to say these words. Who knows what will happen in the future? Perhaps that emperor will abandon you one day. If it's like this, you can come to East Qin, I will always be waiting for you. Namu Kuo did not turn and spoke with his back to her. He didn't dare to turn around and he didn't dare to look at her. He was afraid that if he did, he would regret his decision. He would regret letting her go. He will never abandon me. Qin Ning revealed a faint smile. Then I will continue to wait until that day comes. Kyo. There are so many good girls in the world and there are many more girls who are better and more beautiful than me. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.